Good morning, DJ and PK. It's 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Another night of NBA playoffs in the books. The Lakers actually lead at halftime, but still lose to the Thunder decisively. And Cleveland loses in Detroit 107-97 as James Harden once again more turnovers than buckets. He made 3 baskets, 3 of 13 shooting, and he had 4 turnovers. And Harden in the playoffs, it just seems to be a bad match between those two. I can't explain it. Here's another thing. Cleveland's now played 9 playoff games this year, and they are 0-5 on the road, and they are 4-0 at home. I mean, I know home court's a useful thing in the NBA, but that's ridiculous. Somebody's got to break through, and I figure it's Detroit winning in Cleveland, right? Cleveland's not going to come back and tie this up 2-2. I mean, they could. On paper, it doesn't look like there's that much separating these two teams, but I think there is. We'll see how this plays out. Hockey, Carolina wins again. They're up 3-0. They beat Philly. They are dominating that series. It looks like Carolina and Colorado are just steamrolling everybody on the way to the Stanley Cup final, but it's still singing around. Nobody's gotten there yet, but it is definitely looks how it's trending right now. All right, we're going to pivot now. It is time for us to talk a little hockey, a little Utah Mammoth hockey. Mikhail Sergachev. He comes to town, a Stanley Cup champ, not the only one, but clearly a leader on this team. He plays a massive amount of minutes. My gosh, you just look at the stats. That guy plays so many minutes. He's playing his shift. You know, he's the top defense pairing, so they run him out there for penalty kills, and then he's out there on power plays, and it just seems like he rarely leaves the ice. I mean, he doesn't play half the game, usually, but he plays a lot. And he's got a big voice, big leader. So what does he think of this just completed season? What is he thinking heading into the summer? Here's Mikhail Sergachev with the media.
What did that first round mean to you and to this group to be a part of?
I think it meant a lot to us to see where we're at and how we've developed into a playoff team. And now we just got to go from there and stack series after series and try to win them all. So, I think it was good to see how we stack against one of the best teams in the league in the playoff format. So, it was good.
When you came here to Utah, you were looked at as, a big leader coming in with a ton of experience and the number one guy for the D-Corps. As a leadership core over the last 2 seasons, how have you seen the guys in that group grow with you?
Yeah, I mean, it's actually amazing to see how guys, go from a team that wasn't winning to winning more and then to making the playoffs and, winning in the playoffs and seeing the guys compete and be strong on pucks and then be really strong off the ice too. I think a lot of our guys made the right steps in the right direction and I'm taking them with them. So it's just good to see our young core, getting in those situations and learning from them. And it's starts with our captain, obviously. He's been great player on the ice, but off the ice, he's been one of the best leaders, that you want to follow. Yeah.
Was there a highlight or a peak moment for you this season, whether it's personally or as a group?
I don't know. I don't really. No, there was some games that we won, like game in Florida, when we scored with 5 minutes left in the game, because that was a big game for us. We needed that win. There was some other games when we beat Nashville at home here, but I can't really point one big moment. But probably the first game at Delta Center in the playoffs. That was awesome. Yeah.
We talk a lot about kind of building a team that has what it takes to get to the playoffs. Do you see, in that sense, any similarities between this team and the one that you guys had in Tampa?
I mean, I don't like comparing. Sure. Yeah. We have a different path than that team. Because that team's been, Tampa's been struggling for a long time to get to the first cup. They had to lose in the cup finals and then miss the playoffs. And, it was different. Here, we just start from scratch. pretty much. Get to a new city, new fan base, so I wouldn't compare. But I think we have the right pedigree, on the team and the leadership group and the core and the whole team. Starting with our owner and going down. I think everybody wants to win here.
Around the middle of the season, you obviously got a new D partner in Mackenzie Weeker. How did you guys form a connection / chemistry so quickly, and how do you think you guys did into the postseason?
Weeksy is an easy guy to connect with. He's a very nice, outgoing guy. He's easy to talk to. He's Canadian, and they're all nice. So it was a easy match, I would say. How did we do in postseason? I don't think we played good enough. We could have played a lot better and helped this team. We didn't, but it's the whole team. As a group, I think we could have played better.
Just kind of looking back over the year, how pleased are you with just your general performance in the regular season, then into the playoffs?
Myself, I don't know. It was a hard season. I'll start with that. You play every other day. You travel a lot, but that's all, I guess, excuses. So if I give myself a B- or something like that.
As someone that's been there before, that knows what it takes to win, what about what you witnessed from this team in this first round, in their first playoff, gives you the hope and understanding that this core has what it takes to win in the future?
We were up pretty much in all games in the third period. We still found a way to lose those games. It's just understanding in those situations what you got to do, and that comes with experience. And when you need a goal, you score a goal. We actually did, but when we needed to defend, we gave up a goal. So I think it comes with experience and knowing what you got to do in certain areas of the ice with the puck or without the puck, and or box out, and those are the details that matter. And we kind of lacked them a little bit in pressure situations. But, good thing about this team is we're young and we can learn from that, and we can learn quick. So that's what gives me hope. Yeah.
I know the belief in the room is confident, and you guys are, reaching for these high ceilings, which you'll get to eventually. But as the season has gone on, we continue to hear this D-core is one of the best in the league. As far as continuing to grow and where you guys feel like you are right now, what makes this D-core special and different, maybe? Yeah. And then where can you grow?
We're a tight group. That's what matters to me the most, that we're tight off the ice. We have D dinners, D meetings all the time, and we just, we feel like we separate ourselves from the forward group a little bit. It's not a bad thing. I think it's a good thing, because we're back there, we're defending, we're, obviously Veggie is a backbone of our team, but I think we're up there too, so I believe. And that's it. That was quick.
There's Mikhail Sergachev of the Utah Mammoth. We're going to take a break. When we come back, how about a little bit of football? Matt Babcock is going to talk draft, and then Matt Tait is going to talk football. Stay with us. DJ and PK. It's 97.5, the 1280 The Zone. Good morning, DJ and PK. It's 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Matt Babcock joined us to talk about the NBA draft, the draft lottery, Sunday at 1 o'clock. Here he is with PK and I on The Zone. Matt, good morning.
Hey, good morning. How you doing?
We're doing well. A lot of anticipation here. Jazz fans watch BYU's A.J. DeBonsa play well all year long. It's pretty much unanimous. Everybody here wants A.J. DeBonsa and the number one pick. Is it unanimous across the country in your mind, or are there some holdouts who are looking at somebody else?
There's been a lot of debate all year. I think with DeBonsa, Peterson, Boozer, and as you guys saw all year with AJ, he's just really earned it. He's kind of chipped away at everybody, and I think across the board, I think he's the number one guy. I think you probably have some scouts here and there that might have Peterson or Boozer, but if I were to bet on it, I think DeBonsa is going to go number one regardless of who wins the lottery.
Yeah, and we're hoping that the Jazz win for their sakes, but odds are against them, obviously, I guess, as they are for every team. So if they should draft a little later, we talk about the top three being DeBonta, Peterson, Boozer, but how about 4 through 7? Who do you like?
Well, I think Caleb Wilson's probably in the mix with that top tier as well. And what's interesting with those top 4 guys, they're all very different. And going, looking at that 5 to 8 range, and then looking at the Jazz and what they have in place already, I would imagine there's some interesting internal conversations, specifically because there's so many guards. And how do they see Keontae George taking the next steps in his development? Because this past year, even though the team struggled, he really elevated his play, and he did that as a primary ball handler. And so I'd be asking myself with guys like Kingston Fleming or Darius Acuff, who are both very much on ball guards. Do they coexist well long term? And so it might lead him to a guy like Keaton Wagler, who's more of like a 6'6" on ball, off ball type combo guard, or a Braden Burries at Arizona. But the bulk of that group is guards.
That's an interesting thought there. Who fits? Because don't teams get in trouble deciding who fits? Isn't it just take the best player? And if you have players who are duplicate each other and really don't fit on the court well together, guys are missing a lot of games. Maybe guys shouldn't play as many minutes so they don't miss as many games. Maybe there's a way to do it. And if there isn't, can't you make a trade, especially with guys who are on rookie contracts?
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely a fair point, and I definitely think if there's a clear cut, best prospect available in the front office's mind, they should probably go with that player. I think in this year's draft in that range, it's close. I'd be open to an argument of rearranging that order a bunch of different ways. It's just a very talented group. This freshman class is really incredible, and keep in mind with all the craziness of college basketball and NIL and the transfer portal. These teams are older and well put together, and this freshman class kind of just steamrolled through things, which is really impressive. So my point being is this class is really, really good.
With that in mind, and it's just a projection, so obviously we can't hold you to it, but how many All-Stars would you say would be in this draft?
That's obviously a tough thing to say. I think there's probably I think the top 10, I think all of these players have All-Star potential. Are all of them going to click on all cylinders? Of course not. But I would imagine we have at least several, if not more.
You mentioned that you thought Caleb should be considered with that top 3 group. I was wondering if there was a top 3. He was 4, and then there was a group after that. But if he was really locked into that 4 spot, if he were to move up a spot or two, who moves behind him and who are you dropping down? Or who do you think teams are dropping down and why?
I think it would be. I think every team's going to look at it slightly differently. If I were to bet on it, I think Boozer would probably be the guy to slip. And when I say slip, we're talking about slipping one pick. But yeah, I do think Caleb Wilson does have a lot of fans. His combination. He's 6'10". He's freakishly athletic and very versatile. I think his upside is just very, very high. And so right now the Jazz are penciled in at number 4. That's the guy I have them taking if they were to get that spot.
I've always thought, going back many years, John Calipari knows NBA talent, and he's talked about how when he was at Kentucky, they listed the amount of money that his players were earning. Well, now obviously he's moved over to Arkansas. I didn't watch them a lot, as much as I would watch a Kentucky team. So I'm wondering what you think of Acuff, because I just look at Calipari's guys in the NBA, and he seems to have a lot of them who are good.
Darius Acuff is a very talented player. Another freshman that just had an incredible year. Averaged, I think, 20-some points a game as a true freshman. And, the issue I would have with him, if I'm looking at it from a Utah perspective, is he's only about 6'2". He's just okay on the defensive end. Going back to, coexisting with Keontae George. We got 2, pretty much scoring guards that aren't known for the defensive end. That would be my concern, but the guy is a very talented offensive player, really good with the ball in his hands, creating, and he's a good shooter as well.
It seems like you get to this second group, you can always look at the negative. Wagler was just off the radar, second-round pick. I don't know what he was way out on the fringe. I mean, it's like he came from last place to win the Kentucky Derby and to move here into the top 6. A-Cup people question his defense with Wilson. There's a question about three-point shooting. Are there any of these that you're willing to dismiss? Because it looks like these are the things that are maybe dragging each one of these guys, or might be dragging these guys down in the eyes of some of the teams. Are any of them you think can be dismissed, or are some of those serious concerns?
I'm not overly concerned with anything, too much as far as these guys being guys I wouldn't mess with. I think the guys that are projected in the top 10 or lottery, I think it's, a lot of this is weighing out the pros and cons of each player and projecting what they'll become in the next few years. Again, just a really talented group. I'm expecting big things for this class. And so I know I'm not answering your question super directly here. No red flags in this group to me.
Wonder what you think of Richie Saunders. He was a dynamic player, but he got himself injured there fairly late in the season, so I don't know if he'd be ready. But as far as him being a second-round pick, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm expecting him to get drafted. It was devastating when you learned of his injury. He did such a great job of developing and continuing to get better, and really was playing him heavily into the draft mix. And I think one thing to keep in mind is with the current landscape of college basketball, these guys with college eligibility, remaining, most of them are going back to school. I think the sort of sweet spot is if a guy's not in the top 20. It probably makes sense to go back and cash in on NIL and continuing to develop. And with that said, I think the depth of this draft will be pretty weak, which will help Richie's case quite a bit.
We've got a couple of international players in the NBA who've won multiple MVP awards, and they've each won a championship, and they were both really off the radar when it was draft time, middle of the first round, second round, with Giannis and with the Joker. So with that in mind, I know this isn't supposed to be a very good international prospect class. Just looking at mock drafts, Kareem Lopez playing in New Zealand seems to be the most thought of guy. Is there anybody there who catches your eye that we should keep an eye on, or as advertised, is this just not a good international group this year?
Yeah, it's definitely down from an international perspective. And one thing is a lot of these international players are coming over and playing in college, and so there's less guys going to be in the draft. And so I think just the player pool in general has just sort of been trimmed down because of that. Kareem Lopez definitely, in my book, is the top international prospect. A couple of international guys that did play in college, I think are getting quite a bit of love as well. Hans Steinbach from a German kid who played at Washington this year, really talented player. Ade Mara from Spain, who won the championship with Michigan this year. There's a few of them, but I think moving forward, I think most of these top international players are going to come through the college ranks.
Is age a negative factor in that if you stay in college a year or two, or in the case of the Michigan kid, all 4 years, is that something that you knock them for? Do you think NBA executives knock them on?
Yeah, I think there's two ways of looking at it. I think if you're looking from a projection standpoint, the older the player is, theoretically there was probably some limited upside as far as how much more room for growth is there. So it changes the evaluation in the sense of, hey, is this guy ready to play and contribute right away? And so, like with Axel Lendenberg, who you're referring to, I think he's almost 24 years old.
Right.
And so when you're evaluating him, it's got to be more of what is he right now? What can he contribute day one and within the first couple of years, rather than him being a 3-4 year, 5 year project.
Matt Babcock joining us, NBA and draft analyst for Babcock Hoops. I'd be remiss if we didn't ask you a little bit about the playoffs. Are you one of the people who picked the Thunder to repeat, or are you looking at somebody to knock them off?
Yeah, I think they're going to be tough to beat. There's just so much depth, and they're a well-oiled machine on both ends of the ball. And having a guy like Shea who's get you a big bucket when needed. And I'm thinking OKC. This is probably theirs to lose.
How accurate do you think is to say, now we know we've got this group here coming in the 26th draft, right? And we've seen them play a whole year in college for the guys who are freshmen. And then we just talked about a couple of guys that have played longer. So we can have a little bit more of an accurate feel for it. But we hear a certain draft in the future. Let's just use 27 as an example. Oh, that might not be a good draft. How much do you buy the accuracy of being able to predict 1 or 2 years down the line in terms of which draft would be better or not as good?
Yeah, I mean, we spend a lot of time evaluating at the high school level. I think the expectation across the board is that the draft next year is not going to be quite as good. But I mean, there's always guys that kind of develop later, and things happen. So I don't think it's a situation where we're writing it off completely. But I think it's probably more of a situation where everybody's just so excited about this draft, and it just would be hard to compare. Not even just next year, but any draft compared to this one. I mean, this might be the most talented lottery group I've evaluated.
Matt, we'll leave it right there. Thanks so much. We appreciate you joining us and bring us up to date on the draft.
All right, thanks so much.
When we come back, we'll hear from Matt Tait. He covers Kansas football for R1S1. He is next. DJ and PK, it's 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. We're joined right now by Matt Tait. He covers the Kansas Jayhawks for Wave the Wheat and R1S1 Sports. Matt, good morning.
Good morning. How we doing, guys?
We are doing well this morning. Kansas Jayhawks, they are going to play both Utah and BYU, and as you're probably about to find out, my co-host went to Arizona State, and they're on the schedule too. So they got we like to joke about our 3 local teams. ASU in September, Utah in October, BYU in November. And I am curious, in an era when a lot of people have stopped spending money on facilities and spend it on players, obviously Kansas had this massive stadium rebuild, and you'd argue that just had to be done, the state of the program and all that. Is that providing the type of momentum and energy going forward, both in recruiting but also in the fan base and donors and all that is expected to, or is there a little bit of thought that, man, we zigged when everyone else zagged and it's left us a little behind?
Yeah, I think it's great. I think the response to what they've done and they've done it right is the most important part. It's not been a Band-Aid approach. They knocked the whole thing down and really didn't cut any corners and have made it an incredible facility. And it's beyond 6 football games in the fall too. I mean, they're using that thing year round and certainly plan to do more and more as it gets complete and as the years move on. So, they did it right. That got people excited. It looks nice. It looks fancy. It's as nice as there is maybe in the country in terms of, seat for seat, pound for pound, all that stuff. And I think the momentum would be off the charts if they just won better the last couple of years. I mean, 5-7 the last 2 years, good enough to be good, not good enough to be good, leaving a little to be desired. Obviously, they had a ton of talent both of those years, and especially at the quarterback position. And so I think the jury's still out a little bit on how all in people are, because they want to support a winner on that field. It's great to have the facility, but they want to watch their team win. And so this year, next year, very big years for the program. They were so close to a bowl game each of the last 2 years, and really even just getting to 6-6 would have changed the trajectory entirely. I mean, especially at Kansas, you don't take bowl games and bowl appearances for granted at all. So I think the 5-7 records have hurt them a little bit, but by and large, people are still interested, excited, and the program's still relevant around here, and that's what makes this year such a big year.
Quarterback-wise, you got Cole Ballard, Isaiah Marshall, Rice transfer, Chase Jenkins. What do you think?
Yeah, it's down to Ballard and Marshall for sure. Jenkins is a really nice player, brings some depth, brings some athleticism. They like him. They wouldn't have brought him in if they didn't, and those other 2 guys like him too. So I just think he's too far behind, and he's been injured a little bit in spring. So I really think it's a race at the top with those other 2 guys, and it's a really interesting battle. I mean, all quarterback battles are interesting by nature, but it's a really interesting battle because in some ways Cole and Isaiah are similar, and in other ways they're completely different. I mean, Cole is a really bright quarterback. He runs the offense the way it needs to be run. He knows where guys are going to be. He knows how to get teams into good plays and out of bad plays. He knows, how to be consistent. He knows how to be smart, and he's got a little bit of experience. Isaiah is the opposite of that. I mean, he's the question with him is, how well can he run the offense? How does it look when he's out there in charge? We haven't seen it a ton. He's been on the field some, but mostly just as a playmaker. And that's where he's exciting for people, is because he is a dynamic talent. I mean, when he gets going with his legs, he can make plays that Cole can't make. He can make plays that a lot of guys can't make. So I think the whole thing's going to come down to consistency. And if you made me pick today, I'd probably give the edge to Cole Ballard because of that. I mean, he just has a more consistent approach, and he's shown that in the limited time he's been able to be out there. But I do think they'll both play. I mean, I think if Cole Ballard's your starter, I still think they have a handful of packages, and maybe more than we've seen in the past for Isaiah to be in the game, because he's too good of an athlete and too explosive and too dynamic of a player on any potential snap for him to not play at all. So I think even if it is Cole as the starter, I think they're going to find a way to play them both, not in a 2-quarterback system or alternating drives or anything crazy like that. I asked this spring about that, and it's been done. I don't know that many coaches, if any, anymore want to do that ever or even like it, but what they're talking about is different than that. So I think they both play, but I'd have to pick Cole Ballard as of now. Isaiah's going to need a really, really good camp to pass him.
So that leads us to the receiving corps then. Cam Pickett is back. Their transfers, 50 new players, 32 of them transfers. 12 early enrollee freshmen I read about. But Nick McMillan, a transfer from Buffalo, Najee Cox from Middle Tennessee, along with Cam Pickett returning. Is it wide receiver by committee? Is there somebody who's going to jump out of this group and be dominant? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it is a little bit unknown right now. I think, they've got bodies there that they like. I think if you were to name someone who would jump out, like you just talked about, I think it would be Cox. I think there's a lot to like about his game. Big, strong, physical, big hands, good, strong hands. I mean, he seems to me, and we're not out there every day in the spring and obviously aren't with them all the time either, but just talking to the coaches, talking to some of his teammates, I mean, his was a name that kept coming up, and it also was kind of centered around the idea that he keeps coming up because he keeps getting better, and the light bulb keeps going on for him every day, and he learns a little something and then commits it to memory, and then he's got it. And so I think, if you were looking for a breakout kind of guy, that would probably be as good a bet as anybody. He's not a guarantee in that regard by any means, but he's definitely somebody they like and have high hopes for. But you're right, Cam Pickett's a huge player that's on the returning list. I mean, he was a dynamic part of last year's offense and had some injuries that he battled through that kept him from really breaking out and being the explosive guy that he can be. But he's a veteran. There's a rapport there with those quarterbacks that already exists, and he knows the system and he knows the offense. And of course, the other part of that is Andy Kotelnicki's back as their offensive coordinator after 2 years at Penn State. Did really, really well, relatively speaking, at Penn State. I mean, he had them in the playoffs the first year, and then it all kind of fell apart last year. And so Kansas was really lucky to land him again. I did not think he would find his way back here. I really didn't. He's a future head coach. I kind of thought he might go find that position now at a lower level or something like that. But the connection that he has with his staff, the connection that he has with Lance Leipold is unbelievable. And so when he was available and they kicked around the idea of bringing him back, I think both sides were really excited about it. And he's back, and it's almost like he never left. And so as much as, the Cam Pickett's of the world and some other guys that have been here in the past are veterans in a sense, and there's some value in those returners. Andy's new to a lot of them too, and so there is a little bit of that adjustment that needs to happen, and that's obviously what spring was about in a big way. But from everything I hear, man, Andy's come back and he's really allowed the terminology and the things that existed here after he left to stay in place, and he's learned it instead of forcing the players to learn, what he wants and what he calls things and things like that. He's learned their language, and that's a credit to him for sure. He's a heck of a coach, and I really do think it was noticeable with him gone, and I do think it'll be noticeable with him back. He's just an excellent play caller, and he does some really fun stuff out there, and even when you're overmatched talent-wise, he can find a way to sort of negate that.
Top 4 rushers, or top 3 rushers, I should say, are gone from last season. The 2 running backs, and then Jalen Daniels, obviously the quarterback. So what's going to happen as far as who's carrying the ball?
Well, Dylan Edwards is an incredible talent. He's had a heck of a weird career. He's a Kansas kid. KU recruited him hard out of Derby High School when he was one of the top prospects in the country. I couldn't even give you the list in order of where he chose and didn't choose, but I know he played at Colorado, and I know he played at K-State, and I know Notre Dame was in the mix too. But he finally landed at Kansas. Incredible player. I mean, he really is. It's as much mental with him. I mean, he's got to have his head on straight and be right and be happy and be in a place that he feels good, and all signs this spring pointed to him maybe feeling better than he's ever felt as a college football player. And part of that's credit to him, part of that's credit to this staff, part of that's credit to his teammates, because he was a sort of lightning rod for attention at all of those other stops, and there were some really highs and some really lows, and he's an interesting player, but his talent is undeniable. And everything that I've heard about him so far is that, this guy is a game changer. And so he's a nice piece that you can add for what you just mentioned, making up for the loss of what was in that running back room last year. He's a nice piece for a coach like Andy Kovalnicki to have, because he can do so many different things with him. If he stays healthy and stays happy, I mean, he should be as good as there is in the conference, and has a chance to have a real monster year. They do have some talent behind him. Yassine Willis is a player they brought in, a big physical punishing runner, but he likes to say that he's not just that. I mean, he's got some moves and some shake to him too, but he'll happily run over you as well. It's really wild to watch those two guys stand next to each other, because Dylan's tiny, and it's sort of like that Brandon Jacobs photo from the Giants years ago, when I can't remember who the other guy in the photo was, but big and small, extra large and extra small. I mean, it's wild to see that they play the same position. But there's a couple other backs, a couple returners that have been kind of in and out of health and are hoping to make a splash. Kid named Thurman's one. And then there's a true freshman that everybody talks about and really likes. And his name's Corey Amakri, and he's from Michigan, and physically, mentally, everything. He brings an approach that certainly doesn't seem like a true freshman. I mean, he looks like he's ready to play meaningful snaps right away, and I would at this point be shocked if he doesn't contribute in some way. So a totally different room. You're right about that, but it's not missing talent, and it's not missing depth, and it's not missing options. I mean, they can do a lot of things with the backs they have.
Matt Tait joining us, Kansas Spring Football Tour. You already mentioned the back-to-back 5-win seasons, not getting bowl eligible. Giving up almost 27 points a game and 173 yards on the ground. It's clear the rush defense has to get better, and the defense has to improve if Kansas is going to have winning records and be bowl eligible in that. So what does the D-line look like? How much did they beef that up?
Yeah, you mentioned the number of transfers, and so there's a lot of guys up there that are factoring into that as well, and they're all new to us, right? So we hear what we hear, and there's some names that are thrown around, but without having seen it or gotten to know them or actually seen them deliver on Saturdays, it's hard to know exactly what's going to happen. I know that, the D-line, it's obviously a little bit different when you're talking interior and on the edge, but Leroy Harris is a guy that they're really excited about. He had a pretty strong year last year and was still very much, growing into the position and into himself and into the sport and all of that. And so I think the expectation with Leroy is to have a monster year this year. And there's no reason to think that he can't. I mean, hard worker, incredible length, incredible, athleticism. I mean, he's one of those guys that just really seems like he's ready to take the next step and to make an impact that's bigger than he's had before, and they're going to need that. I mean, that's the biggest thing. Is it's not just they hope he makes that impact; they need him to. And so I think that's a name to watch on the D line for sure. I mean, Again, he's an edge rusher, and so it's a little bit different when you're talking about the interior and the edge, but he's a huge part of it. Blake Harreld's another guy on the interior. He's not going to wow anybody really, but he's just always been there, and he's a veteran KU guy. He's been here his whole career, and he's just a steady, hard-working dude, makes plays, continues to get better, and that's certainly a name that people know, and he still, I think, has a chance to even take another step forward in his production and what he can bring to the defense. They brought in a couple of guys. There's a guy named Iman Smalls. They call him Biggie. He's a name to watch up there too, 6'2", 315 pounds. Dak Brinkley's another Kansas guy. He's been here his whole career. He's on the edge there, on the other side from Leroy, and Dak was highly recruited out of high school in Arizona, and stuck with Kansas. He came in with 2 or 3 guys from the same high school, and I think the other 2 are gone now. They transferred out, but he stuck it out, and he's had playing time, but now's the time for him to take the next step, and everything seems to be as it should be with him. I mean, they're ready for him to have that breakout year, but it's not like he's behind or has disappointed in any way. I mean, he just keeps getting better, and he keeps getting more experience. And so Leroy and Dak are the edge guys to watch, and then with Biggie and Blake Harreld and another guy, David Santiago, who came spent some time at Michigan State and Air Force. That's another interior guy, edge guy. I mean, they have a lot of guys, like I said, that are hoping to just kind of slot into a rotation. They don't mind, rotating guys through and keeping fresh legs on the field. If they have, 8 D tackles that can play and they're all worthy of playing time, they'll find a way to play all 8. If they only have 2, then they'll lean on those guys. But I think they're still sorting that out a little bit. But those are some names to watch and guys that will have to have an impact for this defense to be better.
The thought is if you go overseas, and that's where they're playing ASU, that those teams come back and there's a struggle, and I think they have a bye, and then Middle Tennessee, then they play Utah. Was there any concern about that? Because I think that was, part of Kansas State's thing the year before in Ireland this past season. I'm wondering what the ramification was as far as anything negative by playing that game over there.
I think they're super excited about it. I do. I mean, I know what you're talking about, and I think they like the way the schedule sets up in that regard. They do play Missouri right before that game, which is, their biggest rival from all the way back to the Civil War. So, it's a little bit of a wild stretch there when you look at it that way, but having the bye after the game is important. And then, of course, there are reports out there that say they're making $2.7 million to go play the game. So in this day and age, if someone's going to give you $2.7 million, you go play wherever they want you to play. I mean, and Lance has talked about, wanting to do a game like this from the time he got here. There's a lot that he likes about the idea of being the only game in town, being sort of a spotlight showcase game. It gets more attention. It gets more eyeballs. That certainly helps with recruiting. That helps with your fan base. I think they hope a lot of people are going to go over. I think if they were back-to-back bowl teams and had won one of those or 2 of those maybe, I think the number of Kansas fans that would make that trip would be enormous. But I think that's where they may pay for that a little bit. They may not get the fan support and the travelers that they initially hoped when they decided to jump into this game. But I think overall they're excited about it. It's an awesome opportunity to be in that showcase and then also show recruits and whatever, that you'll go do things like this. So, they've got to play the game and they've got to show well, and obviously they want to win. And if they don't win against a really tough opponent and they get their doors blown off, maybe they'll have some negatives on the back end of it. But right now I've heard nothing but excitement and positive stuff about the opportunity and just the fact that they're going to do this is something they've wanted to do.
He's Matt Tait. He covers the Kansas Jayhawks for Wave the Wheat and R1S1 Sports. Matt, thanks for taking a few minutes and talking spring football with us here and getting us ready for Big 12 football in the fall.
Yeah, it'll be here before we know it. But, I'll take summer first. So you guys enjoy it. And, And that Arizona State thing, the connection you have there is interesting because KU and Arizona State baseball are both factoring into the Big 12 race right now. So
first and second place.
There you go. Enjoy that if you're paying attention, and that's a whole other topic that we could get into another time. But for Kansas baseball to be ranked 7th in the country is even more mind-blowing than the big football stadium and bowl games on Saturdays. It's unbelievable. So thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it, and we'll talk to you again.
There's Matt Tait covering Kansas football. When we come back, what is trending? The headlines are next.
It's time to get your morning started with the news you need to know.
News update.
This is what's trending with DJ and PK. Hashtag NBA.
Cade to the right wing. Cade launches and connects. A big-time long gun goes for Cade, and the Pistons are up 92-87.
Wing right Holmgren. Jab steps on 8. Holds. Cranks a 3. That's online. Looks good. It is. He splashes it. Cha-ching Thunder Monday ball. Chet the All-Star knocks down his third 3 tonight.
LeBron has the worst whistle of any star player I've ever seen. I mean, I've been with him 2 years now. Again, the smaller guys, because they can be theatric, they typically draw more fouls, and the bigger players that are, built like LeBron, it's hard for them. But he gets clobbered, and he got clobbered again tonight a bunch, and that's not like a new thing. That's not specific to this crew or, this series. He gets fouled a lot. That doesn't happen. I mean, guy gets hit on the head more than any player I've seen on drives, and it rarely gets called.
That's J.J. Redick, the Lakers coach, on LeBron James. Whether that is true or not could be a fascinating conversation. It's going to have zero impact on the outcome of this series because they can't give LeBron enough free throws to close the gap between the Thunder and the Lakers. Thunder win 125-107. They trailed at halftime, and they still win very comfortably. The Thunder are better. The Thunder are great. And I think the only team that can take the Thunder down, San Antonio. And we'll see if San Antonio gets there because obviously they're 1-1 in their playoff series. They got Game 3 coming up tonight on Amazon Prime. It's Knicks and Sixers at 5 and then Spurs and Timberwolves at 7:30. San Antonio split the 2 games in Texas. Now they're in Minnesota for the next 2. So we'll see how that goes. The Thunder, that was just really impressive. And Shai Gilgeous-Alexander didn't have a great game. You can't count on Jalen Williams playing. He's missing half or more of their playoff games. I have to go back and do the math, but he's played in less than half the playoff games, I think. And it doesn't matter. They're so good. They're so deep. They find another way to win by it. They were actually, I think, plus 18 when Gilgeous was off the floor. He didn't have a good game. It didn't matter. The Thunder, impressive. So they're up 2-0 on the Lakers. They've won 6 straight to open the playoffs. They just look fabulous. Detroit's up 2-0 on Cleveland. Theme of the morning, how do you go from good to great? How do you go from good to very good, great, excellent, championship? There's so many teams trying to do it. And there's so many of our teams. Now, here in Utah, we got plenty of people who've come from somewhere else, or we don't have an MLB team, so you root for a team from somewhere else. So it's not like it's exclusively our teams, but that question of how do you go from good to great faces Donovan Mitchell here. Is he a good player? Yes, he is. You may not like him, but don't say he's not a good player. That's just ridiculous. Now, Shaq, who was a great player, like LeBron, he thought he got a terrible whistle. But he won 4 championships. And yes, he was bigger than everybody, and how he was refereed was a massive question. But when Shaq called Donovan out, super awkward timing. But the bigger point, Donovan scores, but what else can he do? He's small by NBA standards. Let me just stand next to him. He's a 6-foot-tall guy, but he's not 6'3". In a league where you need to be 6'6". So hard to be a great defensive player. He could apply himself a little more. Let's not kid ourselves. But nonetheless, he's never going to be 6'6". People are always going to shoot over him. He's not going to be a great rebounder at that size. You can be better. There's a lot of missed threes and long rebounds to chase down. He could do better there. And maybe more assists, set more guys up. He's such a scoring threat. But does that get him to great? Does that get him to a conference final? Now, Cleveland's in this weird situation where they've lost every single road game they played in the playoffs, and they've won every home game. They're 4-0 at home. They're 0-5 on the road. They're going home. Maybe they can tie this series up. But that question looms over Cleveland. How do you go from good to great? No different than what's looming over Utah and BYU football. No different than what's looming over the Mammoth or what I believe is about to loom over the Jazz. We can just keep going down the list of local teams. How do you go from good to great? That faces the Cavaliers and Donovan Mitchell right now, because it looks like they might be coming up short on the old second round again. They're down 0-2. They are going home, so we'll see if they get back in the series. The injuries. What is the NBA going to do about all the injuries? There are so many of them. I know tanking's been an issue. I know load management's been an issue. And I know people completely and totally dedicated to the three-point shot are going to be an issue. And by the way, I've been reading stories that could really be an issue in Boston. You heard PK go off on it yesterday, not on Boston because they're already out of the playoffs, but he talked about during the Boston series, and again, Philly at the end of that loss to the Knicks, why this just complete and total dedication to the three-pointer. When it's not going, you got to do something else. It seems like it's an off-season debate in Boston. Postseason press conference wrapping it up. I mean, the Celtics don't just do it. They're coached to do it by Missoula. I mean, they are coached to do it. However, Brad Stevens up there in the front office, what does he think? And where is that going? So you got all these stories, but to me the biggest one is still the number of guys missing games. You don't need to watch a game when teams are either sitting their star players on purpose in the regular season or even in the playoffs missing them, and you know the game's going to be lopsided. You know who's going to win or lose based on the injury report, based on one sentence that pops up on social media or on the crawl across the bottom of the screen. And now OG Anunoby is hamstring strain, late game 2, considered day-to-day as they get ready for game 3. The injuries just keep piling up. What are they going to do about this? We pay to see the stars. Now, OG's a very good player. He's not great, but he is a good player. You know, I think certainly more than half of Jazz fans know who he is. You know, and in the East, and they're coming through town once a year. But people know who he is, and now they're going to be missing him, it looks like. We'll see. Day to day, maybe he'll be back, but it's a hamstring. They need to be careful with that. They need him. Former Kansas star Darren Peterson said the cramping episodes he dealt with while playing for the Jayhawks were due to his high doses of creatine. Wow, Mark McGuire. Hello. Creatine's back, baby. I had never taken it before I arrived at Kansas, but after the season I took 2 weeks off and they did tests which showed my base level was already high. So they said when I dosed, it must have made the levels unsafe. Well, great. All right, well, he's got a story to explain that because a lot of people are wondering why he didn't play more. DJ and PK.
Hashtag college basketball.
Men's and women's basketball tournaments are going to 76. Yeah, no kidding. So the first 4 turns into 12 opening games, 2 sites. So they're going to be 6 games at each site now. I guess we're going to have triple headers. So there you go. The men are Dayton, and then they're going to determine another one. And man, Vegas and Salt Lake look like obvious possibilities. We'll see how that plays out. I'm sure there are people down in Texas who want it too. So they spread those locations around. And, man, people are screaming about this, but the truth is teams getting into the first 4 are advancing in the tournament. I just don't think there's a big difference between Team 68 and Team 28. Now, at the top there is. There are some powerhouses. You can just look and fill Duke into a regional final the last couple of years and be right because they're that good. But even these teams that look really mediocre, Texas, Oklahoma, well, Texas got in and Oklahoma didn't. Well, Texas won 3 games and ended up in the Sweet 16. They weren't that bad. And UCLA had that awesome run. And those aren't the only 2 schools. There's so many teams that have advanced. I can't even remember them off the top of my head. I'm not opposed to this. I think this whole thing's going to 96 at some point, and you're just going to get 32 byes and 64 teams play in the opening round. And the winners advance, and then we got a round of 64. That's where it's going. And, you know, honestly, if the Texases and UCLAs of the world can make these runs, I don't think it's that bad. It looks ugly putting Oklahoma in when they're only a couple games over 500. But if they can win in advance, why not? All right, DJ and PK.
Hashtag NFL.
This is not a drill. This is real. Aaron Rodgers expected to be in town tonight with the expectation of him signing this weekend. This is a big one. Mm-hmm. This is the real thing, folks.
Yep.
Not speculation. This is what we have been told.
Well, I guess in Pittsburgh, Steeler country, sure, make a big deal of it. But Aaron Rodgers coming back, and I know they made a coaching change, but but it still looks like a team that's going to cap out at 10-7. And, Yak, am I off base on this? You're a big football guy. I tell you, Steelers, 10-7. Higher or lower? Well, I'll say 10.5, so there's no push. 10.5. Would you take higher or lower? You would take lower.
I actually would push over just like to 11. Like I think
no way, really?
Yeah, I think they've got a really good wide receiver core.
Huh. All right. Well, I'm not surprised Rodgers waited until after the draft.
Oh no,
what
he wanted
in
to see.
Atlanta,
He wanted to see what played out.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
make sure they don't draft a young guy and push you aside because that happened to what's his face, Kirk Cousins.
Kirk Cousins with Michael Penix. Yeah.
Yeah, and they drafted Penix, and then all of a sudden Cousins like, what did you sign me for? I could have signed somewhere else. So I just think veteran quarterbacks at the end of their career are now going to wait until after the draft, and that's just how they're going to play it. Minnesota Vikings signed former 49er wide receiver Juwan Jennings, 1 year, $13 million. He gets a chance to show he's worthy of a long-term extension. 55 catches, 643 yards, 9 touchdowns. That's good. It's not great. Are they going to get good enough quarterback play? Who is going to be their quarterback? You know, there's a whole theory that you go to a team like Arizona because they got bizarre ownership. They roll through coaches. They don't sign big-time draft and extend big-time players. It's just kind of mediocrity. So maybe they get a little somehow Sam Darnold kind of deal where he's good, but he's got to be in the right situation to be good, which is really what they're saying about Brock Purdy in San Francisco. He's good, but if he's going to be great, he's got to be in the right situation because nobody's Josh Allen except Josh Allen, right? So we'll see how that works out. Vikings trying to turn things around after they let Darnold go. DJ and PK.
Hashtag college football.
Florida State and Georgia canceled a home and home because the SEC and ACC are going to 9 games, and especially for schools like Georgia and Florida State where you got 9 league games, and there are a lot of teams playing soft schedules and hiding, but Florida State and Georgia both have in-state rivals in the other league, right? Florida State plays Florida, Georgia plays Georgia Tech in those SEC, ACC crossover games that we so often see. Kentucky and Louisville,
exactly.
Clemson, South Carolina, some of the other ones. So they're at 10 big-time games. These aren't the teams that are ducking people. These aren't the teams playing nobody, so I get why they canceled that.
Well, and
the ACC will send Syracuse and Wake Forest to BMO Field in Toronto to open the 2027 season. Do I get residuals for that, Yak? Do I get paid for that? How many times have I wasted your time between 10 and 10:30 telling you this? You have a life to get on with, and I have to keep beating this drum. Will I shut up now, Yak?
No,
I will not.
No, it's okay. But
do I get a residual? Do you get a residual for putting up with me?
We should all get a residual. Let's be real.
Right? How come college football ADs haven't figured out to go play in Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver? They got 50,000-seat stadiums. Now in BMO, they're choosing to go to one that I think is actually 30 or 35. So a little smaller there. You can play football in the Dome there. It's baseball season, so you got to get the right date, but you can make it work. Montreal's got Olympic Stadium. They got that BC Place in Vancouver. I'm telling you, BYU versus Washington or Wazoo in Vancouver. Sold out, making money. As soon as they move to week 0, this loophole in the rule may go away. I can't believe BYU hasn't cashed in on it. BYU Notre Dame in Toronto for a bonus game. That'd fill the place up. All right, DJ and PK.
Hashtag Major League Baseball.
Caminero waiting on a 2-1. He swings and launches one. Deep center field, way up in the air, headed for the bleachers. It's a line drive. 2-run homer for Junior Caminero. The Rays busted open. It's 8-4, and what a shot by Junior.
0-1. Sanoha rips that one on the ground. That eats up Mayo, but it pops off his shoulder. He collects. The throw gets by Alonso, and Mack will come in to score. That ground ball ate up Mayo, and when he recollected, he fired a BB, but right into the dirt. Alonso could not pick it out, and magic happens when you put the ball in play.
Wait, magic happened, Yuck? That's why you played that highlight, isn't it? You just heard magic happens.
Magic happens. Congratulations, Miami Marlins.
Magic happens. Okay, so that will never grow old, apparently.
Magic happens.
All right, highlights from around Major League Baseball.
Magic
Tampa's won 7 in a row. They've won 13 out of 14. That is unreal. How many teams are red hot right now? The Yankees are on a roll. They blow out Texas 9-2. Chicago's on a hot streak, 15 straight at home. I think it's 19 of 22 overall. the record at Wrigley Field, and stadium records aren't really a thing in baseball because they keep tearing down the stadiums and building new ones every 20 or 30 years. But since Wrigley has been home to Major League Baseball for well over 100 years, stadium record might matter there. That's 15 straight home wins, and the record at Wrigley is 18 in a row set by the 1935 Cubs. So Chicago's got a 9-game win streak. They've got a 15-game win streak at home. It is crazy to me in baseball, a sport where everything changes every day based on the starting pitching. Even in an era of diminished starting pitching, if you're hot, you roll somebody out there and they get lit up in the first, second, or third inning. What are you going to do, right? But it's lopsided. It's got that whole NBA tanking thing going on. The bottom is bad, the top is good, and the top is just crushing these teams at the bottom. What we do get this weekend is a great series here. Dodgers and Braves. Dodgers, the defending world champs. Braves have the best record in baseball. They've actually got the 2 best records in baseball right now. So they will square off. Braves and Dodgers, first pitch tonight at 8 o'clock. That is the series to watch this weekend. And the Bees lost Oklahoma City 6-5. So 3 games to go in this series. Game 4 tonight, 6 o'clock. Tony Park's on the call. Listen on 1280 The Zone at 6 o'clock. And Mookie Betts expected to start a rehab assignment in Oklahoma City versus the Bees tonight. He's been out since April 5th due to an oblique strain suffered on a check swing during an at-bat. All right, DJ and PK.
Hashtag RSL.
Real Salt Lake headed to Frisco, Texas to take on FC Dallas tomorrow. First kick at Toyota Stadium set for 6:30. Coverage on The Zone starts at 5:30 with the RSL pre-match show. Pablo Mastroeni will join us coming up later in the show. He's going to be here at 9 o'clock this morning. We'll talk with him about playing in the middle of the league. RSL's got 4 games left before they take a big break for like 6 weeks for the World Cup. RSL's been really good against the bottom of the league, with the possible exception of LA, but that was a terrible no call on what should have been a red card. They've been pretty bad against the top of the league, except for Seattle that one night. Man, Seattle had like 5 shutouts in their first 6 games, and RSL scored twice and beat them. But they lost to Vancouver. They lost to Miami. So how does RSL stack up? They're somewhere in the middle. They haven't really played the middle of the league. Their next 4 games against the team that's right in front of them and 3 teams that are right behind them. They're literally playing the middle of the league here in the next 3 weeks. So we'll talk with Pablo about that and about the theme of the morning, from good to great. That is one of Pablo's favorite topics to talk about. We will get to that coming up. The Utah Royals have won 5 in a row. They won Wednesday night again. So they've got a 5-match win streak. They are flying. They have been, there's no graceful way to say this, they have largely been, what's the word I'm looking for? Terrible, atrocious. And it looks like they flipped a switch, because not only are they not terrible, atrocious, they don't even look mediocre. They've won 5 in a row. They only picked up 1 point in their first 3 games. They have figured something out. They're in San Jose to play Bay FC. Can they make it 6 in a row? First kick set for 2 o'clock. They've never been to the playoffs. Now, it's a long way to go, and they got a World Cup break too. But, man, 5 straight wins. That's crazy. They're on 1280 The Zone. Pregame at 1:30. First kick at 2 o'clock Sunday when they play in San Jose. DJ and PK.
Hashtag NHL.
Now Aho back across Svechnikov. He's got to go skate to stick. He goes low to high for Gauze to spare. Now send it cross. They score! It's a power play goal. Andrei Svechnikov. It's the second power play goal of the game, and the Canes have a 3-1 lead here in the third.
All right, NHL highlights. The Carolina Hurricanes, 4-1 winners over the Philadelphia Flyers in Pennsylvania. They lead that series 3-0. I know crazy things happen in hockey, and the second round isn't done yet, and I know the Stanley Cup playoffs get wild, and we still have conference finals to go through. But you look at what Carolina and Colorado did in the regular season, and you look at how these two have dominated the playoffs, they will be exempt from our upcoming discussion on going from good to great, because they look great. They just look awesome. Tonight, Montreal and Buffalo, Game 2. Man, Buffalo has been so bad for so long. They stormed through the regular season. They won their first playoff series. They're up 1-0 on Montreal. This is a big game. Sabre fans will be going nuts in Buffalo tonight. Man, between the Sabres and the Bills, they haven't been able to win the big one lately. Buffalo, really, in hockey, they haven't even been able to get close. It is different now. Buffalo with a great turnaround season. Vegas and Anaheim tied 1-1. They're playing Game 3 tonight. That hockey doubleheader is on TNT tonight, so you can get your Stanley Cup playoff fix there. That's what is trending. It's brought to you by Shamrock Plumbing. There's no job too big or too small. Get the personal touch with Shamrock Plumbing. David Locke is here at 8:30. Pablo Mastroeni joins us at 9 o'clock. Good to great. How does it get done? That is coming up. Next question of the day is on the way. DJ and PK. It's 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
This is Scotty G and Coach Tim LeCoe.
Why is BYU not coming to Logan? It's great that they're playing BYU, but why is there no return trip? Getting this rivalry just on the books in some way, shape, or form is huge. For Utah State, they need quad one games. In the landscape of college basketball, it would not surprise me one bit if Utah State called up Kentucky or called up Kansas. And I wouldn't surprise me one bit if Kentucky's like, sure, hold please, click. Kansas, click. Because I don't think these teams are interested in building other teams' resumes, especially G5 resumes.
The bottom line is the power schools have always and definitely currently hold the cards. For BYU to work with Utah State and get 2 dates on the calendar in today's basketball world, I mean, it's definitely a win. It's a win for both. It's a win for the state. I wish last year they were on the schedule.
Catch Scotty G and Coach weekdays from 10 to 2. Presented by Mountain Land Supply on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
The KSL Sports Zone and Beehive Meals are honoring people that impact youth sports in our communities. Nominate the youth sports volunteer you know for the Beehive Meals Hero of the Week at KSLSports.com/contest. And listen every Thursday afternoon to Jake and Ben for the winner. It's the Beehive Meals Hero of the Week. So here at the Zone, there are many sports stories we can talk about. And we always look for stuff that appeals to the biggest possible audience. And I know that frustrates some of us, or some of you. You probably wish we talked more hockey. I think during the playoffs we actually talked quite a bit of hockey. But for the time before that in the regular season, back in November and December, talk more hockey. It's like, well, it's kind of still football season. And for those of you who love the NFL, and we've actually sat in a meeting, PK and I, why don't you guys talk more NFL? Because people want to talk college football. That's why. And certainly Utah State fans or RSL fans, whoever else, talk more about it. Well, we're trying to appeal to the biggest possible audience. Now, we spent a lot of time talking about teams and leagues, but there are stories that cut across all sports or cut across multiple sports. I think today we've got one that cuts across all. It's something that Pablo Mastroeni has talked about when he's on, and he'll join us today at 9 o'clock. We'll talk to him about this. And it is not a soccer story specifically. This is college sports and pro sports. This is the NFL, the NBA, Major League Baseball, the NHL. This is just across all the sports, and you can argue it's across all of life. If you're the person who says, I want my kid to play high school sports, I want them to, experience the whole thing, teamwork and winning together and losing together and having another mentor. And I know my kid's not going to the World Series or the Super Bowl or the World Cup or whatever, but that's not the point. Well, then this is one of these lessons that you can take away. If all you are, quote unquote, is just good enough to play high school sports, which is a lot of us. It's me, it's PK, it's Yak. It's a pretty common story. We can play something at the high school level, but after that, well, good luck. That's what rec leagues are for. So it's a question Pablo brings up. How do you go from good to great? Now, this could apply to you at work, in your business world. We're going to apply it right now to our local teams because I think currently we have a lot of teams that this applies to. I don't think it applies to Utah State basketball. I think they've got a separate situation the way finances are going. So I wouldn't necessarily think this applies to the Aggies in basketball. I think at their level, they're great. I guess if you want to say, how do you go from good to great in the financial side, that's the real test. And we can set out Utah basketball. I mean, they just finished last place in the league. They got to figure out how to get to the middle of the league and avail themselves of some opportunities I think are out there for them, but they got to get to the middle of the league. And the cool thing is, in the middle of the league they're in, literally half the league can go to the NCAA tournament. So if you can get to the middle, you're at least on the bubble, and you might be in. But for everybody else, BYU. I know they're Final Four dreams, but you know what BYU was last year? They were a good team. Were they a very good team or a great team? Indeed, they were not. They were good. Fight me, Yak. Fight me.
I got nothing.
See, no fight. They were good. Yeah, right? And BYU and Utah, 12-2 and 11-2. I'd argue they're very good. But were they great? No. No, they weren't. They were 23-4. Okay, set aside one win and one loss because they played each other. They could have been Oregon and Oregon State when they were horrific. They were still going to get a win and a loss, right? So let's just set that aside. 3 losses, that leaves 3 losses, all to Texas Tech, who won the league. Those 2 teams, Utah and BYU, clearly not as good as Texas Tech. We saw it play out over 3 games. Against everybody else, Utah and BYU are combined 22-0. So they're good. And I know, and I can see it in our comments, Ute and Cougar fans, come on, man. Stop firing off on each other. You're both good. But are they very good or great? They couldn't match Texas Tech, and then Tech got in the playoffs and got embarrassed by Oregon, and Oregon can't handle Indiana. So how do Utah and BYU get to great? How do they get into the playoff and maybe pick off a game when they get there? And let's see how big the tournament is. You know, can you get to a quarterfinal? That might require 2 wins, depending on what they do. So good to great. I think the Jazz have been terrible, but they are about to be good. I'm just so positive they're going to win 45 games, and I think they can win 50. Now you got to stay healthy, and let's see what they do with the roster, and let's see where everybody else goes. It's good to great. The Mammoth are in the middle of the league now. They made the playoffs. Granted, there were teams with better records that didn't make the playoffs, but they made it to the middle of the league. How do you go from good to great? Pablo's going to come on, and I suspect he's going to go straight to, because he's a coach, he works individual levels. Individual guys we really like. Every team's got popular guys. How do you get better? How do you take it? How do you find one more thing? For Lowry Markkanen, he's going to score it when he comes back. But what kind of defender is he going to be, and what kind of rebounder is he going to be? We got to hold him to a standard there. You're a $50 million player. And Jaren Jackson is too, and he hasn't been a great rebounder. Now, he's been Defensive Player of the Year, so we know he can defend. But, hey, need more. Need more, big guy. Need more from all of you. Because the fact is, they just broke up a team because it was good, and they didn't think it could get to great. That's why that happened. And that's why we get hate email for Danny Ainge, which I think is bizarre, unless, you know, you're a Ute fan who rooted for the Lakers, in which case you hated him as a Cougar and you hated him as a Celtic, in which case I guess I understand all that hate social media post we get. But the guy won big time as a player, you know, won multiple championships. Then he went to teams that weren't good and elevated him to the NBA Finals. He was part of that in Portland, part of that in Phoenix. It's not just luck. He put together a championship team in Boston and won a title, went back to the finals again, and then put together another team. I think he knows something about great. So it's painful tearing apart a good team. But neither Gobert nor Mitchell has been to an NBA final, and Mitchell still hasn't been to a conference final. So maybe they're on to something. Maybe they saw something there. Now, 4 years is a long time. I get that. That was a lot of suffering. The thing is, they got to put together a great team, and that's going to require doing hard things. And I think one hard thing that's going to be required here is popular players are going to have to move on. Because I'm looking at this team that they're building right now, and it doesn't look like a championship caliber team. I watch Oklahoma City in the playoffs, and I don't think if we put up a question here that you can honestly say, yeah, they're going to match up with these guys in the next year or two. I don't see it. There have to be moves out there. And, you know, PK's known Austin Age since he was a teenager. Lots of us have known him. They've been in closer contact. And so they'll joke around about what's going on. I don't think PK has any particular insight because I don't think Austin he's giving up the goods. And honestly, at this point, I don't even know if Austin knows. You know, decisions don't get made until people are under pressure. And are they going to call you back on that trade you talked about, or were you just talking? Well, we're not going to know now. We may know on draft night, but we're not going to know now. And I don't even know if Austin knows now. I suspect he doesn't. But he's going to have to do hard things. He's going to have to move people. Is it going to be Markkanen or Jackson? Is it going to be Kessler this offseason maybe, if he wants too much money? Is it going to be Keontae George, who in another summer is going to want to get paid, we presume? Hard things, hard calls are going to have to be made. And it's great for us because you people, you don't want to talk about bad teams. And there's nothing to say about a great team when they're great. You sit back and you soak it up. But the real debate, when you get down to the nitty-gritty, it's about going from good to great and making hard decisions. I think for BYU basketball, hard decision, do you really want to keep going in on these high-end freshmen? It does send the message, we'll get you ready for the NBA, and this is where NBA caliber talent goes. And you want that. But then you look at the teams that are winning, and are they really loaded with NBA talent? I mean, you could say in college football they're loaded with NFL talent. So I guess the hard question for our local teams there, how do they go from good to great, comes down to money. Some of the hardest questions are for boosters and for the school. What kind of money do you want to commit? This is so sketchy in college sports right now. My gosh, it's sketchy. We're seeing reports, and they're starting to fall in line a little bit, so I want to trust them. But when people start talking about money and they can't be audited, come on, man. If you haven't been defrauded, you've at least had people try to scam you out of money. People start talking about money, weird stuff starts happening. Keep your hand on your wallet, as Jerry Sloan once famously said. Keep your hand on your wallet. But some of these stories are starting to fall in line. You know, the college basketball, there's going to be 50, $10 million teams and 20 teams paying $20 million. Do you really want to do that? Utah's a long way away. Don't want to take a leap of faith. Is there somebody who wants to write those checks every year? You're talking about being good for the next decade. You're talking about a couple $100 million because the price of poker keeps going up. I mean, a couple $100 million. Yeah, you're hip deep in BYU. Have you heard anybody wanting to rescind that "we will not be outbid" quote?
No.
Because while a lot of people would laugh, I got to say, I don't think I would. I would accept this, and I've always accepted this. When my kids are young, I would say it. Like, when you get new information, feel free to have a new opinion. You have your opinion based on whatever info you have, but you get new info, feel free to have a new opinion. Well, I think we'd all be better off if people changed their opinions as they got new info and didn't just stay stapled to the wall in one place. I see the price of poker going up. Somebody says we're not going to be outbid. Well, if Kyle's right about $50 million football teams in 2027, and Kyle's usually right about this kind of stuff, man, if somebody gulps and says, yeah, never mind, I get it. You hear any of that yet, Yak? Or they're standing firm so far?
Everything I've heard is they're standing firm on where they're at, but to your point, that could change.
But I think what you just said is true. And I trust you to have the ear to the ground, and you talk to BYU people and people who love BYU, even if they're not BYU people. And if people were backing away, word would get around. You know, the old where there's smoke, there's fire. I don't know if you'd have two sources and, you could post it old school, but you'd know. And I think the thing that backs it up is look at the transfer portal. I don't think they got annihilated. The Utes lost some guys. Some of them, it's a bit of a one-off. Right? They already had relationships with Kyle or with the offensive coaching staff, and so they went. A bit of a one-off right there. Now, they did lose a couple other guys, and you always lose a couple guys. But I haven't seen these teams crushed, and we do read stories about other teams across the country getting crushed. So they're at least hanging in there for now. But that might be getting stuck in good, not great territory. And there's a certain amount of frustration, and I think great's going to be expected out of Morgan. And Morgan's getting paid pretty well. And people are spending money on the program, so I get it. But that going good from great right now, it's like Major League Baseball. You're in an uncapped world. I find it fascinating that the Millers want a Major League Baseball team. Now, they've gone deep into real estate. They used to be in sports and cars, and they pivoted and doing a lot of work in real estate and health. Well, I don't know if you've noticed all these new stadiums that I referenced in the last segment popping up. They're all real estate deals, and they're all super lucrative. So from that perspective, I totally get it. And even the Millers buying into soccer, they already owned a big chunk of land across the street, and they've gobbled up some more land around the stadium. So even buying an established team with an established stadium, and I think they're just going to enhance the stadium, not going to replace it. And I say just enhance. I think it's actually going to get some fairly major makeovers and have a different look because they did it with the arena, and I think they're going to do it again with this stadium. And so I think it's already in progress. Those are real estate deals. But when they get into Major League Baseball, they're getting into a sport that doesn't have a salary cap. Now, maybe we'll lose the 2027 season and we'll get a harder cap. We'll see. But, man, getting in this uncapped world where anybody can just go deep. But I think one thing we talk about when we talk about this with Pablo at 9 o'clock, going from good to great, what it requires is vision. You got to see a new way of doing things. And you know who had vision? And the reason we're doing this show, because he changed the local sports scene. That wasn't sports talk radio when he started, but there was when he was done. It's Lavelle Edwards. If you're 20 years old, you don't even know his greatness, right? If you're 30, you still probably don't remember him coaching any games. But if you're 50 or 60 and you're listening to us, you think, yeah, that guy's a Hall of Famer, and there's no doubt about it. He took over BYU when they sucked. And there was 40 years of brutal football. Go online and look it up. Hideous. Losing season stacked. There was no reason to think he could go down there and build a powerhouse. The guy had a vision. He had a vision for a different way of doing things. He had nothing to lose. He could always go back to coaching high school football. I was going to say go back to Granite High, but Granite High doesn't exist anymore. So, his alma mater is not a great example. Or not his alma mater, but where he had coached football in high school. He had a vision. We're going to throw the ball. We're going to do it different. Nobody was doing that. Now, about that time, there were a few other people who had a vision. ASU, Stanford, San Diego State coaches. And guess what? Along with BYU, those 4 programs all took off. They figured something out. And we saw when Urban came through town. He had a vision, run the quarterback more. Get a second quarterback if you need one. He went to Ohio State. He played 3 one year and won a national championship. Why have one quarterback? Why not run the QB? If he gets hurt, play the second and third guy, win the title. He had a vision. He did it different. Then he had some other visions that got himself in trouble. But, we'll skip over that for right now. So this whole thing about good to great. We're going to talk about people and teams. We're going to talk about BYU football and Utah football and BYU basketball and the Jazz and the Mammoth and RSL. We got 6 local teams trying to go from good to great. How do you pull that off? And who in our own life doesn't want to figure it out? I mean, you want to get a raise or promotion at work. You want your business. Maybe you run a small company. You'd like to see that thing expand, and you'd like to sell to private equity like Cafe Rio did back in the day and cash out and go to the beach. Well, how do you go from good to great? It's not easy. It takes vision. Pablo obsesses about this stuff. We'll talk with him coming up at 9 o'clock. But vision, work ethic, education, both formal and informal. How do you make yourself smarter? Do you ever stop learning? Go to your boss when you're in your 40s or 50s and tell him, boss, I think I know enough. I'm going to stop learning. See how that works for you. See how quickly the door hits you know where. Jake, you ever walked across the room and blurted that out to a boss? When you had a concussion maybe?
No.
Because that's the only time you do it. And especially our business. So many businesses are evolving now. With AI, everything's evolving. Learn the next thing. Figure out the next thing. And that's what it's going to take. Because we've got a lot of teams that have gotten to good. And we can say a lot of nice things. But we want them to get to very good or great. And that's going to require hard conversations, having vision, doing stuff differently. Because if you don't, somebody else is. Somebody else is going to figure it out. You know why Danny Ainge got to hoist a trophy? Because he figured out, we got a decent team. We got a number 5 pick. We could just stay here. No. Do something bold and aggressive. Have a vision. There's a guy everybody wanted. He's been available he hasn't been. Everybody's wanted him for 5 years. He hasn't been available. Go get him. And the timing was right. Your timing does have to be right. Lavelle's timing was right. Utah County and Utah were getting ready to take off. And he took off with them. All right, DJ and PK. It's 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. We'll talk about one of those teams going from good to great. Jake, we're going into your wheelhouse next. Brace yourself. Prepare yourself. We will get to that next. DJ and PK, it's 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
They've been doing it for a while.
This is Jake Scott and Ben Anderson.
I can't believe I'm saying this, but are we experiencing the most uninteresting NBA playoff we've had for a while? Oklahoma City's great. San Antonio looks to be pretty good. Everybody else sucks. I don't think San Antonio's as good as Oklahoma City. I think it might be even a one-sided West, which seems crazy, but
whoever comes out of the East is going to get trounced by whoever comes out of the West. The only series I think anyone's truly waiting for now in the playoffs is Spurs Thunder, and that's going to come in the conference finals, and that's going to be viewed as essentially the finals because whoever wins that's going to get the championship. So I think everybody's waiting for that.
Catch Jake and Ben afternoons from 2 to 6 on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
The Copper Rock PGA Championship begins next week, starting Monday. The KSL Sports Zone will pair the top 25 players in the world with a listener, and one will get the field at the PGA Championship. The winner will receive a Copper Rock logo golf bag and a $100 gas gift card. It's brought to you by Copper Rock, where the pros play. I have not been to Copper Rock, but PK has. I've seen a lot of video from Copper Rock. It looks fantastic.
It's a great course. I've played it.
All right, DJ and PK, it's 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. The question of the morning, a question that, I don't know if it haunts, that might be too strong, but it's a question that looms over a bunch of our local teams. How do you go from good to great? Pablo Mastroeni loves that topic. He's going to be on at 9 o'clock. RSL's facing that right now. They're a good team, but how do they get to be a great one? The Jazz, I know they've been terrible. I think they're about to be good. But that's not great, as they will find out when they bump into Oklahoma City or San Antonio in the playoffs, if they get that far. That's what great looks like. That's what they're chasing. That's why they broke up the last group. The Mammoth made it to the playoffs. That's good, but you want to go deep, and you need to be great. And it looms for BYU and Utah football and for BYU basketball. And I'm fascinated, Jake, because I think you're following this more closely than I am, but I'm following it, and from a distance, I think BYU's been good 2 years in a row. It was a great first year because you have to factor in that it was the first time most of that staff coached in college, Chris Burgess aside, but other than that, it was mostly pros, and the schedule was partially made for them. They inherited a team that was partly made to get to the Sweet 16, which BYU's only done a couple other times. I thought that was a great season. But then you remove that whole caveat, and now it's your schedule. You've got something, you got a feel for this. Not that you don't stop learning. We just covered that. They'll keep learning too. But I'm looking at this roster that's going together, and it's good. They brought in some good players. They've done some stuff that I wanted to see them do. There was a little bit of a local Utah all-star team floating around college basketball. Well, bring some of those guys home. You probably can't get them all, but bring some of them home, and they have. And they've gone out and it looks like they have another lottery pick. So they've done that. But I'm looking at the pieces come together, and if we define great as Elite Eight, which is why I want to set the bar right now, I don't think they have that. I think they have a first or second round tournament. Now, they're not done. They're still trying to bring guys in, but it's all still getting late. A lot of guys have committed here. Doesn't mean they won't bring in one or two key guys. Jake, am I off base, or are you looking like, yeah, they put together a nice team. It's an NCAA tournament team, but it looks like a team that goes out in the first week, not a team that goes out in the second.
As currently constructed, I think you're right. The biggest thing they're looking for is they got to find a true big man. That's what they've been looking overseas for. They've got a couple of guys who are in the NBA draft cycle right now that they're hoping will withdraw their name from the draft, and maybe they can scoop one of those guys up. There is a guy that's actually, funny enough, playing with Ricky Rubio right now in Spain. His name's Michael Ruzic. He's a Croatian big man that they're hot on the heels of. So if they can find a true big man that can offer them more than what their big man offered them last year, then I think they have the chance of making the run that you're talking about them having the goal of. But as currently constructed, it's probably a first weekend team.
They don't need, although it'd be awesome if they had it, some dominant 7-foot center. You can win at a very high level in college basketball with 3 6'10" guys across your front line. You can do it. It's been done.
They only have one 6'10" guy right now.
That's interesting that they're waiting on guys and it really makes sense, waiting on guys to pull out of the draft. And let's face it, you can influence that in a way that you didn't used to be able to. And that goes back to the boosters. The hard things that have to be done, some of them involve money. And that's why I set Utah State basketball aside from this discussion of good to great. Because I think for the money they had in the league they were in and everything they have, what they did is just about what they can do. Maybe they could win a second game and get Sweet 16.
Sure.
G5 teams aren't really going further than that anymore.
So
if you play G5 football, it's pretty hard. San Diego State did it a couple years ago, and the door's kind of been slammed on everybody since then. So, but the more money, if BYU ponies up more money, will someone pull out? Why take a maybe in the draft if I got a sure thing of getting paid at BYU and I can go back in the draft a year later?
Well, and to your point, that's what they're kind of banking on right now. The name to know if you're looking at guys in the draft that BYU is held on the heels of, he's an Italian center by the name of Luigi Squigo. He's 7'2". He's 250 pounds. He's been playing their top league in Italy for multiple years. He is currently slated to kind of be a first half of the second round right now. He's going through the NBA workouts. The thought process is if he does not move himself into the first round with his workouts, then he ultimately would probably take the guaranteed money that comes via NIL, multiple millions, because that's what a big man's worth right now in NIL, and that's where BYU can get into the fray. But they have to wait for him to ultimately go through these workouts and then decide, hey, I want to go the college route.
All right, that's intriguing. I mean, that does sound like that, not having ever seen him play, right? So let's just take that at face value. But not having seen him play, that does sound like the kind of player they need. That sounds like a pretty good match, and maybe that's what elevates them and turns them into that team that's playing in the second week. And we can sit here and talk Sweet 16, Elite 8, and you don't know how the matchups are going to fall, who's going to be healthy, who's going to have shots falling, who's going to get the calls and the free throws or the lucky bounce off the rim. but you still have a pretty good feel for a roster and what it looks like. And the cool thing is now you're in a league where you get tested, and you can really set that bar. And if you don't match it, you have time to get better, identify your weaknesses, because somebody in this league is going to be playing in the second week, probably multiple teams, and you might have a Final Four team in this league, as they did just this past year with Arizona. So, but, I mean, obviously Houston's been really good. Texas Tech might put something together. I mean, you can go down the line. Iowa State's been very good, and I haven't even mentioned Kansas. I'm 5 deep before I get to Kansas. That's stupid to wait that long to talk about Kansas, given their history in basketball. All right, DJ and PK, it's 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Scotty G joins us next. Going from good to great, it takes money, and it takes vision. And maybe Scotty just got a glimpse of those two things in action. He will explain next. Stay with us. David Locke is coming up. He's going to join us at 8:30. Pablo Mastroeni is here at 9 to talk about going from good to great. We'll talk good to great with David Locke as well. DJ and PK, it's 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Join Scotty G and the coach, Tim Lacombe, Thursday from 10 to 2 at Tim Dolly Mazda, 10785 South Automall Drive in Sandy. DJ and PK. PK taking the day off. Got a little business to attend to. He'll be back on Monday. Scotty G stepping in for a moment. Scotty G, good morning.
Good morning, DJ. How are you?
I'm good. I want to bring you on for a couple reasons. One, to confirm your greatness, and then two, to confirm my greatness. And after we dislocate our shoulders, patting each other on the back, we will go our separate ways.
Yeah, I like it. Let's go.
If you're okay with that.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah.
There's been quite the little furor here with Aggie fans and Cougar fans. I think Ute fans have largely sat it out. Home game in Provo, neutral game in Delta Center, 2 basketball games. And this plays into the topic of the show today, which is how do you go from good to great? And I think we've got a lot of teams trying to go from good to great. And it doesn't matter. Pablo Mastroeni loves to talk about this, and he's on later this morning. It's certainly a question for RSL, who's been good, but they've not been great. I think the Jazz are about to be good, but they broke up a good team, so they need to get to great. How are they going to do it? The Mammoth are good. They need to get to great. BYU and Utah football, Cougar basketball. For your Aggies, I kind of feel like at the level they are at, they have been just about as good as they can be. There's certain realities in college sports these days. However, the Aggies are trying to move the needle. Going to the Pac-12 is a bold move here. They're trying to be as good as they can be. That doesn't make you great. It doesn't make you Indiana or Ohio State. But it requires vision, and I know from talking to you, the story broke about this deal, and then subsequently you talk to more people, and you think this deal is better for the Aggies than it appears to be on the surface. And maybe the whole vision thing that we talk about, you can have a vision, the way Lavelle Edwards had a vision to throw the ball. You can have a vision of a new world order. You get to change the rules if you're going to excel. So what might the Aggies have done that changes the rules a little bit and moves the needle here?
Well, I think it's more of a understanding of the current landscape of college basketball. And I do understand on the surface, it's not something that Aggie fans are overly thrilled about. And I get it. I totally understand that. But it's also a situation where you can go from good to great and really establish yourself as a high-level program is in a few weeks in March. It's about the NCAA tournament. It's about seeding. Number one, it's about getting there. And number two, it's about the seeding you get when you arrive there. And I think Utah State looks at that 9 seed that they got last year, and they're realizing that, okay, you know what? We need to be better than that. How can we be better than that? How can we be recognized as a team that should be a 6 seed? And I don't think there's any doubt whatsoever that you saw that team last year. That was better than a 9 seed. They deserved a better seed than the 9 seed. So how do you establish that resume? You load up your schedule with quad 1 games. If Utah State was playing Houston on a one-off deal and then played another game at the where the Rockets play, would Utah State fans be upset about that? Probably not. If they were playing Kansas, or if they were playing another Big 12 school, Kansas State, in a similar situation, would Utah State fans be upset about it? Probably not. The fact that it's got BYU attached to it that has another element of anger there. And I get it. I totally understand. I went to Utah State. I understand the feelings towards BYU, but also it's you gotta peel away that stuff, and you gotta realize that the reason this was done was not to resume a rivalry. It was to load up your schedule with quad one games that's going to bolster your resume so that you can make sure that you get a spot in the NCAA tournament if you do not win your conference tournament. And then when you get there, hopefully you have a much better seed than what you got before. So yeah, is it ideal? No, but can you understand the method behind it? Absolutely yes, 1,000%.
And the Aggies need more money, and the Delta Center game is going to be more lucrative than most people can imagine? True
that
or
is
false?
True. As far as I understand, and I think that there's a lot of projections that have been done, a lot of looking ahead to, if we do this, then we will receive this. And I think that when, and again, speculating here a little bit, but I think when they ran some numbers, they realized that, okay, financially, this could be a very, very good opportunity for us. And I think that's why Utah State decided to do just that.
Another story is breaking, and you and I have talked about this on the Ultimate Aggie podcast. If you're a Utah State fan, check that out, KSLSports.com or on YouTube. And there's the Players Era Tournament, which they're giving NIL money out there, and everyone needs more NIL money. It is free money. You just have to get in on that. And so now the format for next year is coming up. And, Scotty, this is going exactly – well, no, not. It is going mostly as I thought. I thought it was going to go to 32 teams. It's going to 24. I thought there'd be multiple tournaments. I thought like 3 or 4 8-team tournaments in a row. They're doing an 8 and a 16. So it's a little off, but the fact is they're blowing it up bigger. They're inviting more schools to come in, and they're going to dish out more cash. And I think the key thing here for our local schools, and Utah cannot take advantage of this right away. They got to get better in basketball. They got to get to the middle of the league. They got to get their fans back. And then they can do what I think the Aggies and Cougars need to do, which is get in on this. I told you that, the TV viewers are largely back east. Like 70% of the country lives in the central or eastern time zone. So if you're building one of these tournaments, you're going to bring in Notre Dame, you're going to bring in Michigan, you're going to bring in St. John's and Florida. It's all as predictable as the day is long, and that is exactly what they've done. All those teams have been invited to play next year. But you need people there. You need a quote-unquote studio audience. And there's only a handful of schools in the West that I think can bring large numbers of people to Vegas. And so I was telling you, Gonzaga should get in on this because they will bring Vegas. Their fans will go to Vegas and watch these games. I think BYU and Utah State can do it. Utah not yet, but they can get to it if they get better. But Gonzaga, Utah State, BYU, UNLV, New Mexico, San Diego State. I don't even know if UCLA fans could bother themselves to drive up the freeway to Vegas. They should probably try it at some point to see, but I won't guarantee that. So the field comes out, and guess who's in, Scotty? San Diego State is in. Gonzaga is in, UNLV is in, and they're all there to put butts in seats. I mean, Gonzaga's elite. The other two are definitely there to put butts in seats, without question. It's free NIL money, and I know you can't get in every year, and I know these things get worked on ahead, and Utah State just got a new AD, but this is something BYU and Utah. If I were a BYU booster writing these big checks, I'm like, why don't you go play in that tournament? Do I have to write all the checks? Go pick up some free money right there. And it sounds like a good deal. You'll get all these teams that are playing. They get like 8 teams from the Big 12 have been invited, but nobody from the western part of the U.S. Oh, Arizona would put butts in seats. They're another team. But no Arizona State, no BYU or Utah, no Colorado. They got Texas Tech is in, and Baylor is in, Iowa State is in, West Virginia's in. Yeah, but they're not going to put butts in seats. I think BYU and Utah State have to get to the front of this line as soon as possible. Have you heard anything about that?
I have not, but I know that this is, it is a high priority. And I do know that is something that Utah State is desperately working towards. And I think that they'll get there. It would not surprise me, especially if they put together another decent year. If they're another NCAA tournament team next year or this upcoming season, it would not surprise me if next year that they're in that. Because I think that there is a certain level of understanding that, you know what, we get butts in the seat, we're going to be okay. I'm shocked that BYU has not been involved in it. With the star power that roster has, I can't, I'm blown away that BYU isn't front and center on that bad boy. I mean, they'll bring, I know that they're bringing UNLV in to try to put butts in the seat, but I've been to games in the Thomas and Mack for those home games recently. They're not bringing a lot of people into those games. So it would not surprise me if BYU or Utah State were to bring more fans than even a hometown UNLV squad. So I think they'll get there. It would not surprise me if both of those teams are in that tournament next year, but it is a priority for sure. I think everybody's lining up saying, what can we do to get in on this thing? Because you're right, free NIL, you got to pick up those dollars wherever you can.
As Utah State tries to make a move from good to great, it's interesting in this conference realignment and how it plays out. Before, you'd be saying, well, if there's anyone they want to model themselves after in the Mountain West, it's probably San Diego State because they went to an NCAA title game. They've had multiple Sweet 16s, but it's a different deal. You're in a major metropolitan area with spectacular, weather. It's apples and oranges. Now in the Pac-12, and to be fair, Utah State beat San Diego State a lot. Beat them for regular season titles, beat them for conference tournament titles. It's more that San Diego State came back to the pack rather than the Aggies accelerating and becoming a Sweet 16 team of their own. But now going in the lead with Gonzaga, okay, Spokane, that's similar to Logan, right? The weather is not spectacular. You're not right on the beach. It's not one of the, top 30 TV markets in the country. It's a different deal. And Gonzaga has had more consistent success in San Diego State over a longer period of time. But at the same time, it's not a perfect matchup either because Gonzaga's not playing football, so they can put everything into hoops. And the Aggies are playing football, and they're going to continue to play football, so there's no point in discussing anything else. What do you think Utah State is missing? How do they close the gap with Gonzaga? Or in this era with NIL, are we going to see Gonzaga, maybe drop back to the pack a little bit, and that's how the gap gets closed? What do you expect there? And, again, going to the vision thing and trying to go from good to great, what can the Aggies do?
I think it's a combination of two. I think NIL will bring Gonzaga back down to earth a little bit, and I think we've already seen that to a certain level. And I think Utah State, when they look at their resources available towards them, they have at least initially invested more into basketball than they have football. And obviously, football is going to take a big chunk of your money, and there's nothing you can do about that, but basketball has been a high level of priority for Utah State because I think they look at it and say we can be more successful with 15 guys in this sport than we can with 85 guys over in this other sport. And last year, Utah State had a higher payroll, if you will, on basketball than they did football. And it wouldn't surprise me if this year ends up being the same for Utah State. So it is a priority. I think Gonzaga comes down to earth. I think Utah State, and when I say Gonzaga comes back down to earth, relative to Gonzaga, I don't think we're going to see Gonzaga as an Elite Eight team year in and year out. I think that they're going to have a hard time coming up with the financials to keep pace. And that's another reason why I think they made that jump to the Pac-12 is that the Pac-12 gave them that full share without having a football team. And so financially, it made total sense for Gonzaga. And that's what it's all about now. It's just about money. It's about raising as much money as you possibly can. Utah State has made a bunch of strides. I don't see why they can't go under the current status of what we're dealing with right now. I don't think that there's a way that I don't think Utah State and San Diego State can't go toe-to-toe with Gonzaga, not maybe on a year in and year out basis, but once every 3 to 4 years. I don't see why those two schools can't win a conference tournament or win a regular season tournament with Gonzaga, because I think those two schools are going to get better. I think Gonzaga is going to take a step back, and I think there's going to be an evening playing field. So I honestly, in going from good to great, I think Gonzaga is going to get a little closer to good. And then I think Utah State, San Diego State's going to get a little closer to great, and they're going to meet in the middle. And I think you're going to have a great conference setup.
Scotty G joining us. He's with Tim Lacombe, 10 to 2 every day, hopping on for a segment here. this morning. I'm curious, in commercial breaks, are you at the point now where Tim tells you hilarious stories that cannot be told on the air about his time as a college basketball manager or assistant coach? Because he's told me some stories, and they're awesome, and a lot of them are not fit for air, but you just see and hear crazy things. And even if it doesn't happen to you firsthand, you hear them secondhand from other coaches. You will not believe. And then you get this crazy story from whatever school and whatever place. And then in recruiting, the stuff that happens, that's just sensational. Are you at the point yet he's dropping all the good stuff? Or is he just slowly reeling them out, a breadcrumb here, a breadcrumb there?
Oh, yeah. And that's the thing. Every day, now look, we're on only week 3, so the sample size isn't large yet, but every day I hear something that's just like, wait, what? And then there's this urban legend thing with Rick Majerus, because I wasn't here during a good chunk of the Rick Majerus era. So, but I've heard a lot of the urban legend stories about Rick Majerus. So during a lot of commercial breaks, I'm like, okay, is this true? Is this not true? And 98% of the time it is true. And so it's like, oh, okay. So yeah, that did happen. He's like, oh yeah. And then this happened on the top of it. All right. But he did tell a story yesterday on the air, which absolutely blew me away. And we were talking about Mark Pope and his Q&A that he did, where he was taking questions and answering them and just saying, okay, you haven't landed any recruits. Why is that? And he would go on and say why it was. It was a PR move by Kentucky. But he said that he, and I forget the kid's name, but he and Mark were going into a kid's home for a in-home visit. And Mark had the idea, and Tim was very, very open in saying this was not my idea. But Mark said, on our way to this home, let's stop by a grocery store and buy a bunch of ingredients to make a cake. We'll get the aprons and all this stuff. And so they did it. And then they walked into the kid's home and said, hey, Mom, sit down. We're going to go ahead and we're going to make a cake and take over your kitchen. And so here's Mark Pope and Tim Lacombe wearing aprons over their BYU gear, making a cake in a kid's kitchen and presenting it to the family. And I said, well, how did that go over? He's like, pretty much like a lead balloon. And it sounded like they ultimately did not get that kid, but apparently Mark Pope just decided it would be a really clever idea to go ahead and take over a kitchen. And I don't know about your wife. I know my wife would not want a couple of random dudes coming in and saying, hey, where's the flour? Where's the eggs? Where's the sugar? No, that would not go over well in the Garrard house. I don't think it would go over well in the James house. And I'm pretty sure it didn't go over well in this recruit's home as well.
My wife would be standing shoulder to shoulder with you. She'd be looking at me like, who are these people you brought into the house, and why are they going to rummage you through the kitchen? I'm going to have to clean all this up later. This is just more work for me. If I wanted a cake, I would have gotten a cake. I don't need these.
So I guess when you see that Mark Pope struck out on, the 20 top kids and the 14 kids that visited, all of them said no, there may be some reasons why that happened.
That is that's the kind of stuff I'm looking for right there. That's an excellent story. You just know they're out there making a cake on a recruiting trip. That is hilarious. All right, what do you got coming up on your show today? After us, 10 to 2, you and the coach will be here. What are the topics on the table?
Well, certainly when the Lakers start complaining about not getting calls, and then it's on the heels of everybody else complaining about officials, it makes you – so you got Donovan Mitchell saying, well, I guess I'm going to have to flop now. You've got the Boston Celtics complaining about not getting calls. Now you have the Los Angeles Lakers complaining about not getting calls and pulling the officials aside after the game. You got Boston, and now you've got Donovan Mitchell, and now you've got the Los Angeles Lakers, and they're all complaining about not getting calls or calls that are wrong. And so does the NBA actually have a problem here? It seems like it's heading that direction. Perception is reality. So right now there's a lot of big markets out there perceiving that they're getting screwed over by some calls. So how does the NBA fix it? Do they even care? And is anybody even going to challenge Oklahoma City? So I'm going to say, by the way, I'm going to throw out this question on the air. I want to get your answer. I know I'm pivoting a little bit here. The Oklahoma City Thunder will win an NBA title in, and I'm going to say less than 20 games. I think they'll do it in 19 games. Yes or no?
I'm going to take no.
You think
I
it'd be
the
higher?
Number's probably more like 20 or 21. Yeah, to get through the playoffs with 3 losses in 4 rounds is pretty rare. And they did sweep the last series, but there's a bigger talent gap there. I think you get up, even if you get up 3-0 in a series, you take your foot off the gas, you drop a game or two. And we saw when they got to the final, I mean, they won it last year, but they didn't dominate. I mean, with the distance, right? So I think that they can be pushed. I think, if let's say the Knicks come out, whoever comes out of the East will have a ton of confidence because they will have survived that where it looks like everyone's pretty even. And it doesn't matter if it's Brunson or Cade Cunningham or whoever. Somebody will go off and, have a night or two. They're shooting the ball really well. The Thunder might sweep the Lakers because the Lakers are so depleted. I still kind of think the Lakers get one. And it may be a case of where the Thunder are up 3-0 and there's like
gentleman sweep.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll take the over, not by much. I get your point. It'll be interesting to see. I mean, the Spurs are the one team I thought could push the Thunder. They did it in the regular season. The playoffs are different, but they could push them. Maybe they can beat them. So I didn't think the title was a foregone conclusion, but if the Spurs stumble against Minnesota, that just seems to open the door wider for Oklahoma City. Maybe they'll catch a quote-unquote break. Not that I think they need it, but it could be an easier path.
I think that San Antonio-Minnesota series is going to be those dudes are just going to be exchanging haymakers for 6 or 7 games, and whoever comes out of that, Oklahoma City is going to be pretty rested. So I'm going to set the line at 19.5. I'll take the under. You're going to go over?
Okay. I'll take the over. Over.
All right.
Yeah. Not by much. I mean, you're setting a pretty good line there, and if you set it at 20.5, I'd really struggle. I do feel like, they're not going to play multiple 7-game series, I wouldn't think. I think 20 or 21 is the number. But to your point, they're storming through this. And this question, how do you go from good to great? Well, drafting well, whether that's San Antonio getting some lottery help and picking 1, 2, 4, Wembayama wasn't a genius pick. And maybe the Jazz good to great. I mean, that's a topic. I mean, Sunday, 1 o'clock, we find out. Do the Jazz draft 6th? Do the Jazz draft 1st? What are they going to do? If you draft 1st, you take A.J. DeBonson, away you go, and that helps you go from good to great, I would expect. So a little bit of luck can definitely be part of the plan. Scotty G, appreciate it as always. We're here from 10 to 2 today.
You got it. Anytime.
DJ and PK, David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, coming up next. How did the Jazz go from good to great? Not that they're good yet, but I really think they're at the doorstep. We'll talk with David about that coming up. Stay with us. DJ and PK, it's 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. This is your last warning, people. It's Mother's Day this weekend. You gotta get it done. Minky Couture's here to help this Mother's Day. Give her more than just a gift. Give her comfort she'll feel every single day. Now enjoy special Mother's Day deals. 50% off any regularly priced blanket with the code ZONE50. Shop online at minkycouture.com or in the store. Remember, ZONE50. Save yourself some money. Mother's Day this weekend. You procrastinated long enough. It's almost time to start planning. Good luck, guys. And remember all the moms in your life. Moms, grandmas, favorite aunts, mentors, neighbors who were nice to you growing up, whatever. Mother's Day. Get it right. Here we go. All right, DJ and PK, it's 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone, the topic of the morning. Good to great. We got a lot of local teams that are good. BYU football and basketball, Utah football, the Utah Mammoth RSL, and the Utah Jazz. And we're joined now by the radio voice of the Utah Jazz, David Locke. David, good morning.
I keep hearing you talk about good to great, but what do you do when you are purely great? When you are David James and you have been great for so long, you don't even remember what good looks like. You have been just elevated to great 24/7 in everything you do for decades, and now you talk to us about good to great, but you can't even relate. It's like Jerry Seinfeld, once a great comedian who talked about what regular life was about, but then received such esteem status, so much wealth, that he actually couldn't relate to the common man, and his comedy became really poor. DJ talking about good, like Jerry Seinfeld talking to the common man. You haven't seen good. Jerry Seinfeld hasn't seen the common man. You're on a different level, my man. I can't wait to be with you this morning.
You could not wait to deliver that. You just couldn't wait. I'm glad you got that out of your system, David. All right, let's start with the NBA playoffs before we get to the Jazz and my theories on the Jazz. As you watch the playoffs unfold now, there can only be one champion, but there can be a bunch of teams that are at a championship level that are great. Maybe not historically great, but great within the context of that time. How many teams do you think in the league right now are great? And then who are the teams on the next tier below that? We'll label that, the level of very good. But how many teams are really great right now?
So I really have had the opposite reaction of the NBA playoffs. And I don't mean this critically, but I feel like nobody other than maybe Oklahoma City's great. I'm really unimpressed with most of the teams I'm watching. And the reason is because of the structure, the way the league is built this year, or now under the cap. Three things have happened in the league. One, the first and second apron are really prohibitive. You just can't fill out your roster like you used to be able to. And so teams are just not, the best teams are not as good. Second thing, they raised the floor of the salary cap to 90%. So every other team is better. It's why tanking was so pronounced this year, because you had to put $100 million on the bottom of your bench so they didn't play so you could lose games. It's why it became such an issue. But when the talent is so much more spread out across the league, and the difference between the best teams and the worst teams is actually really quite thin at this point. And so what I'm seeing in the playoffs is really the opposite. No dominant team. No really superior team. Maybe Oklahoma City, but hard to tell because they really haven't played anyone yet. And they went to 7 twice last year to win the title, so I actually don't think they're actually that dominant. The league is the margin between the best teams and the worst teams is just thinner, way thinner than it's ever been. Toronto's really not that good. It was missing 2 starters, and they took Cleveland to 7. Like, that's just an indictment on Cleveland. And I don't mean that I think it's probably good for the league. It makes for better competition. It makes for the best first round of all time. But you ask me if I've seen great championship teams? No, I really haven't. I think the margin's very slim, and it's also why the injuries have a bigger impact than they've ever had before when the margins are that slim.
Okay, that's all good stuff right there. So as you look at the Utah Jazz, I think they're building a good team. I've told you, I'm positive. I mean, it's just a theory, and I'm looking into the future, so I can't guarantee anything, but I'm just sure they're going to win 45 games next year. And I think they might win 50. Now, we got to see them finish putting the roster together, and we've got to see them and see what the competition in the West does, and then see who stays healthy, because someone will be gutted by injuries for sure. That's all out there. But they can get to good, I'm sure of it, but they broke up a good team. And the only reason to do that is because you think you can build a great one, and you didn't see a way forward to that group. But I'm starting to struggle to see a way forward with this group, with 2 $50 million players already on the roster. We've already discussed in length in previous appearances about paying Kessler this summer, and if you pay him $5 or $10 million too much, it's going to come back to bite you. Do you feel like there's a clear way forward to great for this team, or does it feel a little murky? They can certainly get to good, but great, part of it is just be lucky, and Monday wake up with the number 1 pick because Sunday at 1 o'clock you hit. So certainly that would help. Good fortune would help. But how many ways forward do you see for this group right now?
Well, I mean, if you hit on the draft, you really have a way forward because you're going to have 2 great players on rookie contracts pretty early in their career, and that's a really good way to do it. So let's just not underestimate at all how important Sunday is, right? Like, you get Ace Bailey, you get Darren Peterson, and suddenly both of them emerge while they're still on their rookie contracts. The fact you're overpaying Jaren Jackson, Lauri Markkanen, and everybody else becomes completely irrelevant. You're terrific. I think this is iteration 1. When you draft Caleb Wilson or Carlos Boozer or Cameron Boozer, and they become really, really good, really fast, and you're going to then have to move Lowry or Jaren, you're making another iteration in there somewhere as you move the pieces around and move your salary slots around. So I just think this is iteration 1. I mean, I have concerns on this team. Like, 3-point shots have been contested at the highest rate ever in the history of the playoffs this year. Defense is incredible. Do we have the athleticism actually to do that with this roster? We definitely have the size. Do we have the athleticism? We have enough ball handling. We're seeing various teams really struggle with, lack of ball handling at times in the playoffs. we be able to have enough depth when your top two players are that? Do we have, I like to talk about 240 minutes. I think we're about 100 minutes short of rotation players right now. So there's a lot of work that has to be done still on this roster, and that's what the offseason is for.
Going from good to great. BYU, Lavelle Edwards, Hall of Famer. He had a vision, right? We're going to play different. In an era when everybody ran the ball nonstop, he started throwing it. And there were some other schools who around that time decided to do the same thing. Stanford, Arizona State, San Diego State, and they all elevated their programs because of it. Though they were on the cutting edge, and we saw Urban running the quarterback, and he went to Ohio State after having the success with Alex Smith and at Florida, and he had 3 quarterbacks. So if they had injuries, and they did, he played 3 quarterbacks and won a national championship. You got to do stuff different, and I'm wondering then if the NBA pivoted to the 3-point shot, and they're not going to pivot away from it, but I look at all the talk after the Celtics go out launching threes and seeming to have no other option, no other plan. Are we going to start to see a tweak to the formula? Are people going to be looking for a different way to gain an edge? Because shooting threes when you can't hit threes seems futile, even though I understand the math that gets you launching them in the first point. When you missed 8 in a row, why do I think the 9th one's going in? What do you think about someone in basketball having vision and playing the game a little differently, which maybe you get to build your roster differently and, you get an edge?
Yeah, I've heard this, and that Cleveland 0 for 11 from 3 in the fourth quarter last night. I find myself leaning the other way, actually, but I might, we'll see. I mean, the trend this year was about possessions. Right? The trend this year was about offensive rebounds, getting extra possessions, winning the possession battle. Everybody kind of equalized the amount of threes they were taking. And so we got into a possession battle. That was the new thing. I do think as the league is flattened out, as I was talking about, you probably have to avoid being – I think the problem with the Celtics is they're 30th in too many categories, right? Or 28th or 29th. I think they're 30th in rim shots. Like, I'm not sure you can be 30th. You can skew yourself, but I wouldn't be 30th. I also wouldn't be 30th in three-point attempts. Like, Minnesota's problem is they're not getting enough threes up in the playoffs. And no one's talking about that. But they're down to 30% of their shots being threes. That's the problem. They need to take more threes. Threes are just a nice topic. Everyone likes to do it. The first chance they can talk about too many. First time Boston failed. It's an easy one to go to. But I don't think Boston's problem is too many threes. I think Boston's problem is not enough shots at the rim. I think Boston's problem is that they're 30th in some categories, that they've swung too far. But honestly, I find as the rest of the league decides, maybe we're shooting too many threes, I would go the other way right now. It's still worth 50% more. I'd get 5 shooters on the floor. I would spread the floor. I would shoot. I would actually try to find more threes.
Is it possible to get more layups, dunks, and free throws? Because they are, when you get them, they really pay off. But is it possible to get more of them? And the Jazz possibly playing 3 7-footers next year, will they be better at getting them, better at denying them, better at both? And how much will that matter?
Give that to me again. I'm not sure I followed that one. You went a different direction I thought. Sorry. I presumed your answer, and when you presume, you make a, what out of each. Sorry. Give me that again.
The return when you get layups, dunks, and free throws is so good. The problem is it's hard to get those things. And I just wonder if the Jazz next year, with the size they're going to have with 3 7-footers, are they going to be a lot better at getting those layups, dunks, and free throws? Are they going to be a lot better at preventing them? And how much of an edge is there in two things if they swing that way at either end of the floor and get really good at those things?
So Detroit, thank you. Detroit this year set the NBA record for the largest advantage in the restricted area of any team ever, and really won the rim on both sides of the ball. That, I think, has to be the model for the Jazz, to try to emulate what Detroit has done. If this season was about two things, it's about possessions and rim. And if you go look at the best teams in the NBA, they all deny the rim. So the Jazz did a very good job of denying the rim last year and just weren't a very good team. But that was Will Hardy's defensive structure, and then when Walker gets hurt 4 games in, it makes it very difficult. But the rim is going to be as vital as you're talking about. I think the Jazz have to be top 3 or 4 in denying the rim next year. The defense is going to fail. And then offensively, the rim is key. I mean, you are correct. Defenses usually dictate whether you get to the rim or not. So offensive rebounding gets you to the rim a little bit extra, and I think the Jazz are going to have to find a way. But you got to spread the floor to get to the rim offensively. That's the trick, right? Is like, how are you getting to the rim with a big, huge group that doesn't spread the floor while you also are denying the rim on the other side?
Well, there are a lot of little things you can do along the way. How much do you run? If you are denying the rim, how much do your guys get up and pressure the passing lanes? I mean, it was a long time ago, but Jerry Sloan he always defended inside out. And then when he got Brian Russell and Shannon Anderson and Howard Isley, all of a sudden they were in passing lanes and they were running like who are these guys? Why are the Jazz doing this? You know, he got a different set of players, and so he got a different philosophy when those guys were on the floor as a group. So I'm wondering if there's a little something there. I think also it's about having a high IQ basketball team. I watch so many players go to the rim, and as Brian Dunseth would say, calling a soccer game, they pull up the landing gear, and they drive, they shoot, and they don't want to roll their ankles or whatever, and they kind of, I mean, for lack of a better word, they flop, right? And they go sliding and skidding across the floor. I think we can all see Steph Curry doing that, and I think he's probably been protecting his ankles because of ankle injuries. Anytime a player goes down, John Stockton was great at, as soon as he saw his 5-on-4, you push the advantage. Because even if you don't get the initial fast breaker layup, you've got 5-on-4 for 2 or 3 seconds. In the NBA, that's a long time. You might get a really good shot out of that. So it's a little bit of IQ. It's a little bit of how do you choose to defend. It is a little bit about offensive rebounding. But that seems to be the math that all these NBA teams are chasing. How do you get a couple more? If it's just one possession a quarter, it's a big deal.
And also the transition thing you brought up is really interesting. You know, you can be really, really good at denying the rim, but if you can't get back in transition, then when you give up and the way we play seems to give up transition, and you don't get back in transition, those are rim shots. So it's not just half court. You've got to find a way to not have the other team in transition, so therefore you're able to those count as denying the rim. The other thing you're seeing with Detroit, the way they play defense, San Antonio, the old Jazz teams with Rudy, is if you have someone who's really protecting the rim in the middle and let Stephen Castle get in on you, let Almon Thompson or Oscar Thompson get in on you, defensively it allows you to pressure outside a little bit more. And that will be interesting to see if the Jazz, they don't have the personnel to do it yet, but are Jaren and Walker combination good enough defending the rim that Keontae, Ace, whomever they sign, can go get up on guys? Now, you know, as of right now, Lowry's one of the worst isolation defenders in the league. Keontae's not very good. Seems really unlikely that those guys can get in. Maybe you're going to play much more of a shell where you're just trying to protect areas. Then you're giving up a good deal of threes, and you're not going to be able to be a pressure defense and force the turnovers. Kind of to my previous point, you better not be 30th. You better not be 28th. You're going to have to find a way to create something.
Yeah. David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, joining us here. You hearing any rumors about the draft? Have you taken a deep dive on any of these players? If they get number 1, I think we all know what the Jazz are doing. But if they draft 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I wonder if any of those spots, any of those players excite you more than somebody else. Or you're too far away on your deep dives.
No, I haven't probably deep dived as much as I want, but I've listened to a lot. I mean, it's really fascinating. Like, I'm listening to Lee filled in for me on Locked On Jazz and had Tony Jones on, and they're like, okay, AJ's unequivocally the first pick. And then they get to Darren Peterson, and they're like, Tony's like, he's going to average 25 points a game. And Lee's like, well, he might have 30. And then they get to Boozer, and they're like, well, I mean, he's a 2010 NBA player. And then they're talking about Caleb Wilson as though he's like Kevin Garnett. I'm like, holy crap, AJ DeBonsa better be unbelievable. Right? Like, if that's really what you believe the other 3 guys are, AJ DeBonsa is unequivocally the number 1 pick, and he might be. Holy crap, he better be great.
First off, I think he can be really good. I think watching him at BYU, I think his game's made for the NBA. And I think just the whole makeup, the way he carries himself, all the psychological stuff, the maturity stuff, I think he checks all those boxes. I get why he's number 1. And the draft is deep, so he better be great, because if he's not, somebody else behind him will be. And, yeah, so I I get all of that. I'm amazed at how many teams here really have a chance. It's not just the Jazz, really have a chance to take a jump forward if they get lucky. You know, Indiana, I think we all assume they're just down for 1 year. If they get a top 4 pick, that's great. But if they don't, it goes to the Clippers. Could that restart them? The Warriors have the same odds the Mavericks had last year. What if the Warriors hit? The Jazz are poised. If they hit, it does seem, because we did have so much tanking, like there were a lot of teams. There's already a little bit of fire. You could be throwing gas on the fire if they get lucky in the draft lottery.
Yeah, what happens if Indiana wins it? They get AJ DeBuck and Tyrese Halliburton.
They win the East next year.
Right.
No.
Right. These guys all, the Caleb Wilson thing's super interesting to me. I do believe playing hard, and that's like it seems AJ does too. And I do believe playing hard is an important one here. That's kind of what jumped out at me about when you watched Victor and Cooper the last few years. They just played so damn hard. AJ seems to play that hard. Peterson, it's hard to tell, honestly. He's such a great athlete. It's really hard to tell if he plays that hard. Boozer, I think, does play that hard, but he's such a non-athlete that it's hard to sometimes see that. And Wilson seriously plays hard. So to me, like that's the first one. It's like, do they play? I remember a kid out of Arizona many years ago, Derek Williams, second pick of the draft, and I watched his film. Like, the kid doesn't play hard. He doesn't suddenly start playing hard in the NBA. Like he doesn't play hard. He doesn't run the floor. He doesn't, like, there was a kid. I'll be Derek Queen last year in the draft, and I could turn out to be really wrong on this, but like I wouldn't have drafted Derek Queen. Like just personally, like he doesn't run ever. Like he saunters, he kind of jogs. He doesn't run. Like he's on the baseline. He's coming up to set a pick. It's like let's set this with a sundial to watch him come up and set the pick. Like move into the pick. Let's go. Let's play some tempo. So I think there's guys that really. Playing hard is probably the skill here that's most important, and most of these guys at the top of this draft seem to do that.
He's David Locke. He's the radio voice of the Utah Jazz. David, we got to run to break here, but thanks for joining us, and enjoy the draft lottery. We will talk to you next week with a whole new set of questions because we'll know where the Jazz are picking. We'll talk to you then.
Hoping for a blessed Sunday. Let's go.
RSL head coach Pablo Mastroeni joins us at the top of the hour. Stay with us right here on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
3, 2, 1. This is Scotty G and Coach Tim LeCoe.
The head coach of the University of Utah, Alex Jensen, kind enough to hang out with us.
I knew there's not any one person or one thing to blame, but the decline with the basketball at the University of Utah, I knew it had gone down. We played 4 top 10 teams at home, and we played Arizona was number 1 in the country, and the place was half full. And I remember walking out, and it was the first time I got pissed off because things had just slid, and it's everything. There's just a disconnect, I think, through the community. I can't count how many people that came up and said, yeah, we've had tickets, or we used to have tickets. Everybody remembers going to a camp when they were young, and they have memories of a game and stuff. It takes a while to build. The connection's been lost, and it doesn't help that the team changes as much as it does every year. I'd love to have the continuity, but that's just not with the rules the way they are now. It's not the world we live in.
Catch Scotty G and Coach weekdays from 10 to 2, presented by Mountain Land Supply on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
The Copper Rock PGA Championship begins next week. Starting Monday, the KSL Sports Zone will pair the top 25 players in the world with a listener, and one will get the field at the PGA Championship. The winner will receive a Copper Rock logo golf bag and a $100 gas gift card. It's brought to you by Copper Rock, where the pros play. Man, I love that gas gift card idea. That's an excellent idea. Last 2 times I filled up, gas went up 20 cents a gallon, and then the next time it went up 10 cents a gallon. What? I mean, I know it's going up, but at 10 and 20 cents a fill-up? Holy cow. So you got a $100 gas gift card coming your way next week. Be ready to win. We'll have another golf championship. We'll have Bob Casper in, and we'll have another one of our drafts, and we'll see who picked Scotty Scheffler because we all laid off him last time. But we're not going to do it this time because he's finished second 3 times in a row. He is right there and ready to go. All right, DJ and PK, I'm going to put a question up on Twitter in the next commercial break. I haven't put it up yet, but I'm going to throw it up there. Scotty G came on with an interesting point about Oklahoma City in these playoffs. Been talking about going from good to great. And OKC, Scotty said 19.5 playoff games. They win the title in less than 19.5. That's what he believes. I took the over. I think it'll take them 20 or 21. I think they're going to lose 4 or 5 games. Huge talent gap in the first round. 2 home games with the Lakers, who have multiple injuries. Obviously, they're still missing Doncic. Austin Reeves is playing. I don't think he's 100%. He beat the projections coming back, and then he had a really bad game. It just suggests he's trying to push through stuff. So I don't think it's been a real test of the Thunder yet. They've earned an easy point of the playoffs an easy portion of the playoffs with the way they performed in the regular season. But it's going to get tougher, and it's rarely a cakewalk, and you're just not likely to go 16-1 or 16-3 through the playoffs. Maybe they can pull it off. I'll take the over, though. But we'll put that up on Twitter and see what you think. You can all weigh in on that. I thought that was an interesting thing from Scotty G right there. We've been talking going from good to great this morning. And Yock earlier was talking about BYU is waiting for the draft to see who pulls out of the draft. There's some guys they got their eyes on. They can help themselves with some big guys there. I think it's an interesting question for our local college football teams because they are not going to be at the top of the NIL payroll in the foreseeable future. I think BYU's doing fine, but not at the top. I mean, the top is really – it's incredible. Going to $50 million. And maybe they will be, but I think if they were at the top, we would see the Cougars bringing more transfers in, more high-profile transfers, and we're not. And I think part of that is because they did at the transfer portal very aggressively a couple of years ago, and quite frankly, they were disappointed. It didn't resonate. It didn't lead to the results that they expected. You just add water and stir. It doesn't work. So pick their spots when they have a need. Find somebody who is underappreciated, who maybe they should have recruited a year ago and they were on the fence and they didn't, and now they definitely like him. You know, going and getting Jack Kelly out of Weber State, brilliant, right? Off to the NFL. There he goes. He gets drafted. So they've been picking their spots. And that doesn't suggest they're at the top. There'd be more 4 and 5 stars, and they're careful about who they bring in and how do you fit in, given the honor code and the rules. And they've got a recipe, and they're sticking to it. And so for the others, do you go this NFL model? Invest in a big-time quarterback. Invest in a left tackle. Invest in a pass rusher. And then from there, stick to your budget. We've seen a ton of NBA people go to college basketball. We've seen a little bit in the NFL move into college football, but not as much. But we have seen some. I mean, Bill Belichick is obviously the high-profile example. But some of the NFL guys have ducked into these general manager-type roles. So I think we'll see more of that. Maybe we were all already seeing it from the Utes, and Kyle just didn't talk about it because they certainly had strength at their 2 tackle positions. But they choose the kind of quarterback we had. We were doing our spring football tour, and PK was talking about how Arizona, Fafita doesn't have the size to be an NFL quarterback, but he's a really good college quarterback. And I think that's what the Utes have. Now, they have 2 guys who really just don't have prototypical NFL size. But one of them is definitely a good college quarterback. And then with Bert Ficklin, we'll see. The little bit they let him do as a freshman looked good, but there are more bars to clear, right? What happens when teams have tape of you? But my gosh, that kid's explosive. Good luck containing him. That's the one thing we got to get. If you don't have gap integrity, if you're not assignment sound, and then he's going 60, 70, 80 yards for a touchdown. All right, DJ and PK, Pablo Mastroeni, RSL head coach, joins us next. From good to great, what is next? We'll talk with Pablo. Stay with us right here on The Zone. DJ and PK, it's 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. It is time to talk with Real Salt Lake coach Pablo Mastroeni. Pablo, getting ready for a trip to Texas. I'm intrigued the way this season has gone, and I'm intrigued by something you've mentioned a few times we've been on the air. We've been talking this morning about how do you go from good to great. RSL sitting in a playoff spot. RSL has a winning record. We're a third of the way in. A lot of nice people in the national media saying nice things about you. You're clearly a good team, but you lost to Vancouver. You lost to Miami. You haven't hoisted a trophy in a while, so you're not a great team. When you talk about that with your staff, what are the next couple of boxes you want to check as you try to move the team from good to great?
Well, I think I think consistency is important, and I think the only way you get to great is being consistent. And I talk about it all the time. It's really Monday through Friday. It's about winning the games, and more importantly, I think it's about learning from each game. Right? I don't think we don't get low when we don't win. We don't get high when we do win. It's really about the consistency of improvement from week to week and being a better version of ourselves than we were the previous game. So I think that's a starting point. And then obviously, like you said, you got to raise the trophy at some point. I think what makes it really difficult now versus in years past is the amount of teams and that are in this league. And and in our case, the West is just it's a beast. I think we'd be somewhere like third or fourth maybe third in the East if we were in that conference. But it's a battle, so it's not easy. And I don't know if you saw the Champions Leagues. There's 2 Mexican teams in the finals.
I did.
So it's a bit daunting. But I think when you look at it that big, and that's why I don't think it ever benefits you to think that big. Until you're doing all the little things right. I think it's easier to digest. It's easier to work through the week to week work, to be consistently performing at a high level so that the results go in your favor. And then, of our 3 losses, 2 of them have been admittedly refereed the wrong way. 2 red cards and 2 of the 3 losses. So I feel really good about where we're at. I feel good about how we're learning as a group. And I feel that this year could be a special year.
What do Morgan Giavogi and Sanabria bring to the team? Those 2 guys, it's not like they got 20. You put someone who scores 20 goals, we all get it. But you talk about these guys in the middle of the field and the way they think. What is it that they're giving the team that excites you so much? Because I don't hear you talk about players that often the way you talk about those 2 guys.
Yeah, I just think that their soccer understanding is extremely, extremely high. And what that usually does, and then technically they're elite, right? So 2 of the most technical players that we have. So when your soccer understanding is really, really high, they understand how to work with other players, right? So they're always thinking one step ahead. They're always an option after they pass the ball. They're always finding players in difficult positions to be able to break defenses down. So I just think that, and I think that's why great players are really expensive to get on board. They're just because they're not only great players for themselves and what they do on an individual perspective, and this is what I kind of explain to ownership is Morgan Giavogi might not get to 20 goals this year, but I'll tell you what, we're going to be a better attacking team if he's on the field because he creates the type of synergy and he's almost like the jockey on the horse. He's always thinking about the next play. And when you have younger players on the field that might not be thinking 2 steps ahead, he will facilitate the decisions for them. But also when you have these guys in training every single day, they start to leach their soccer brain into the group. And now you see guys like Gozo and Aiden really thinking at a much higher level that we couldn't do as a coach because it's hard to go out in the field and show them what to do every day.
There's a World Cup coming up, and there are a lot of people worried the United States isn't going to do well. And if the United States, and you never know, so maybe they will, maybe they won't, but if they don't do well, I'm sure I'm going to hear this line of thinking, well, when the U.S. gets their best athletes playing soccer, and I'm always like, no, the U.S. never gets out-athleted in a game. It goes back to what you talk about. And can you explain what you want out of somebody with technical ability? Because to me, that often means, can you make the ball do what you want it to do? Do you hit it where they call it the right weight or the right pace? Can you curve it left to right, right to left, bend it around somebody, a goalkeeper, a defender, whatever? Because the elite players, it's almost like magic wand territory. You see these balls just whipped in accurately. It's phenomenal. And to me, that's technical ability. Do you want more than just that when you say that?
Yeah, yes. And I'll go a few steps behind where you just described, which was the actual execution of the pass or the cross or the shot. I'm going to go as far as understanding before they receive the ball, they are scanning the field. So they know where they are in relationship to their teammates and their opponents. So that's first. if you don't know where you are, it's a good chance you don't know where you're going when you receive it. So the highest level players understand space and time in relationship to their teammates and their opponents. The second part of that is how they receive the ball. What surface do they receive it? Do they receive it with their, first touch going forward? Are they touching it sideways into a space? So then once they know where they're going, then they know exactly where to manipulate the ball with their first touch. And then the last part is having scan and understand where you're going, is executing the weight of the pass, the arc of the shot or cross or pass, and understanding where I have to play this ball in relation. If my teammate's running into space, understanding, again, space and time is how far out in front of him do I have to pass this ball given the space that he has. So all these things are, when we talk about technique, it's all of those things. And those things are done in, some of those in milliseconds, some of those in seconds. But the greatest players in the world are basically scanning and making these, formulating these equations, solving these equations in their heads before you actually see it on the field.
You mentioned ownership, and I think the real magic overlooked here, and you've been in pro sports and you've been in different organizations, so you can speak to this. Mm-hmm. New ownership comes in, and this happens in radio and TV too. This is, whatever your business is, you've probably seen this. New ownership comes in, and they want to do things their way and on their people, and often it means taking everything back down to the ground floor and building it up again. And the problem in the organization, not to flatter you while you're sitting there, it wasn't the coaching. You had taken teams pick 13th and gotten them to 7th and squeezed stuff out of guys. In the front office, had found guys that nobody else wanted. You found them in the draft. They found them after Portland let Caliscan go. They drafted a Meccanelli out of Cornell. Found a goalkeeper. I don't even know how, but he's out of contract. He's a free agent. Didn't have to pay anything to get him, just bring him in. They did some great bargain basement shopping. The last thing ownership needed to do was pull apart the pieces that were already in place. And they decided to come in and they thought, what we need to do? We need to spend money and write checks. And Sanabria comes in and Giavogi comes in, the guys we just talked about. But the one thing that hangs over this, and you mentioned the Champions League, people in the U.S. won't really think the teams in the U.S. are good until we see them beat Mexico. Nobody really believed in the national team until the World Cup team you were on in 2002. They beat Mexico in the World Cup on a neutral field in Asia. Okay, they must be good. So now the league needs to do that, but as long as you have a salary cap, as long as Mexico gets to spend whatever in Liga MX, and you have a salary cap, so you have to find a kid in college like Solans and start him as your goal scorer, and then people are like, why doesn't he finish more chances? I'm like, well, I don't know. He's playing at UCLA last year. It's a little bit of a step up. Maybe he needs more than 10 games to adjust, So as long as you have the salary cap and you have to find a Brazilian goalkeeper who's out of contract and you have to take the kid that Portland didn't want, and then you have injuries, so you got to take a 6'6" guy who, honestly, you don't even see 6'6" guys in the back line. I can't believe he's playing at this level. But you win with him. People can say whatever they want. You're winning with him. But that's not going to help you beat Mexico or whoever else. How do you solve that problem? Take your big view of the sport, because that's what fans are paying money to see. When the teams from Mexico come in for Leagues Cup, they want to see you beat them again and again and again.
Yeah, well, I would say, and again, I think just with this tournament that just took place, I think we have an advantage having the Leagues Cup here in the United States. I think they're playing away games. And you saw, the Toluca game. Yeah. I mean, that looked like it was insane, the amount of passion and energy that was in that stadium, and teams vibe off that, right? So we inherently have an advantage playing our games here at home. And so I think, I think, and there's been obviously, MLS teams that have won the Leagues Cup. So I back ourselves, given what you said is like, and I think that's what makes us unique is we're trying to find, we're developing young players, we're developing young men in a way that, and I think this year was a huge step forward as far as the recruitment was concerned. I think we did a fantastic job as a club of adhering to, the values of our ownership, the values of the club, the things that we believe in, and actually getting some real quality people and players. And I think we can be successful and sustain it. I think we have a good blueprint for what works, what doesn't. We've made some decisions in the past with very, like what you're saying, spending a lot of money on certain players. but they weren't necessarily the best people, or they didn't fit in the locker room well. So we were never ever able to get the most out of them, right? So these guys that we've brought in, we've identified, they're aligned with us and on the field, off the field, and what they're doing to the group that we currently have, because they're cut from the same cloth. They're all hard workers, they're all growers, they're all learners. Is that we're getting like a synergistic effect to the group, a compounded effect to the group. So I think we can. It's not so much about how much money you spend. It's really about the fit of the player. And there is a certain caliber of player that you must have. But I feel like like we just talked about, Sanabria and Morgan Gilavogi, what they've done and Stein as well. And what those three have done to help Noel Kaliskin, Luna, Gozo, Solons, this is sustainable, right? And it's not going to always be about the money. So, I think, but you're right. I think, MLS teams have to beat Mexican teams, and the Leagues Cup provides a great opportunity. But I just feel like because we don't do everything like the rest of the teams in the league, it doesn't mean that we can't get there. We just have to prove that we can get there, and I think that's what we were alluding to earlier.
You've got another stretch here of 4 games coming in pretty quick succession here. I think it's 4 games over 15 or 16 days. And then you hit the World Cup break. So going back to your days at North Carolina State, Pablo, it feels like midterms right now. You're playing a lot of teams that are either just barely in front of you or just barely behind you in the standings. Do you think these games, 2 home, 2 away, so I like the way that kind of balances out, does this give you a good look at where you really fit in the league? I mean, if you dominate this group, then I would say you're in the top tier of the league. Maybe you're to the bottom of the top tier, but you're in the top tier of the league. Obviously, if you had a string of bad results, we'd have to reevaluate that a little lower. But it does feel to me like a midterm. Do you feel the same way? Because you're classic one game at a time guy, and I might be, walking into a door here.
No, well, again, I think everyone on the outside can frame it however they want. I just know how I have to communicate with the players. I don't say this, hey guys, we have to win X amount of games. I'm saying, guys, these are the things from last game that weren't good enough, that we have to get better in the Dallas game. And that's it. And again, my job as a coach is to make sure I take all the pressure off those guys so they can play free. So it's from a fan's perspective and even from, I think a coaching front office perspective, I think, that's a good assessment. It'll give us enough data, enough performances to kind of see where we're at, and more importantly, what we need to do better moving forward. And I think that's the way we are as a group, and we'll find a way to maximize the output of every player on this team, and hopefully those performances lead to continued good results, especially here at home, which has been nice. But again, we start off this week tomorrow against a tough Dallas team away from home. But like I said, because we're so process oriented, I feel really good about every game. I don't feel like we're ever underprepared, ever, punching above our weight. I feel like we're in a really good headspace, and I feel it on the training field every day. I feel it in the coach's office every day. And I think for me, that's a really important barometer to have, and its feel, and not so much the other stuff.
Pablo, we appreciate the time as always. Thanks for giving us a few minutes, and good luck on the road this weekend.
Thanks, DJ. Talk to you later.
All right, there's Pablo Mastroeni, RSL head coach, and you'll hear that Dallas game 6:30 pregame at 5:30 on 97.5 The Zone Saturday night, and then they come home for 3 games in a week. 2 of them at home and then off to Minnesota, and then the World Cup break. It'll be a long break. They'll be off for like 6-7 weeks there. All right, DJ and PK, we're going to take a break. When we come back, everything you missed in this show, everything in the world of sports. We've been talking about going from good to great. I see not 1, not 2, but 3 teams. They're operating at a great level, whether it's the NBA playoffs or the Stanley Cup playoffs. There's a 4th team we can debate. Might know a lot more by the time we gather back here on Monday. We will get to all of that. Getting you up to speed. All the headlines you missed next. Stay with us.
3, 2, 1. This is Scotty G and Coach Tim LeComb.
Why is BYU not coming to Logan? It's great that they're playing BYU, but why is there no return trip? Getting this rivalry just on the books in some way, shape, or form is huge. For Utah State, they need quad one games. In the landscape of college basketball, it would not surprise me one bit if Utah State called up Kentucky or called up Kansas. And I wouldn't surprise me one bit if Kentucky's like, sure, hold please, click. Kansas, click. Because I don't think these teams are interested in building other teams' resumes, especially G5 resumes.
The bottom line is the power schools have always and definitely currently hold the cards. For BYU to work with Utah State and get 2 dates on the calendar in today's basketball world, I mean, it's definitely a win. It's a win for both. It's a win for the state. I wish last year they were on the schedule.
Catch Scotty G and Coach weekdays from 10 to 2. Presented by Mountain Land Supply on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Cade to the right wing. Cade launches and connect. A big-time long gun goes for Cade, and the Pistons are up 92-87.
Wing right Holmgren. Jab steps on H. Holds. Cranks a three. That's online. Looks good. It is. He splashes it. Cha-ching Thunder money ball. Chet the All-Star knocks down his third three tonight.
LeBron has the worst whistle of any star player I've ever seen. I mean, I've been with him 2 years now. Again, the smaller guys, because they can be theatric, they typically draw more fouls, and the bigger players that are, built like LeBron, it's hard for them. But he gets clobbered, and he got clobbered again tonight a bunch, and that's not like a new thing. That's not specific to this crew or, this series. He gets fouled a lot. That doesn't happen. I mean, guy gets hit on the head more than any player I've seen on drives, and it rarely gets called.
DJ and PK, it's time for the Slacker Radio headlines brought to you by Trajan Wealth. Call Trajan Wealth today, your local trusted financial fiduciary. Call them at 1-855-TRAJAN-1. That's 1-855-TRAJAN-1. Or visit their website at TrajanWealth.com. All right, you just heard from J.J. Redick there. I think so many things when I hear that. First off, I'll say, I think J.J. Redick was speaking his truth the way he saw it. And I hate the way in pro sports and in college sports, which is becoming pro sports very, very quickly, so many people retreat to the castle, pull up the drawbridge, don't want to be bothered, don't want to talk to you, don't need to deal with you. They're already making their 50 or 100 million or whatever. They want to deal with you. So the fact that J.J. Redick will go out there and talk and say what he thinks, I appreciate, especially because I think he knows he's going to get some scoffing, some scorning, some he'll get ridiculed, he'll get derided. Because here's a couple things that J.J. Redick is smart enough to know. They just lost to the Thunder by 18. LeBron wasn't going to make enough trips to the free throw line to make up for that. The Thunder, I thought, were pretty much coasting. It wasn't SGA's best game. They weren't really good when he was on the floor. They know they're going to beat the Lakers. They know they're better than the Lakers. They trailed at halftime. It didn't matter. They pulled away in the second half, and they won by 18. There weren't going to be enough calls to change the outcome of the game. I don't think that's what JJ's saying. Also, to the rest of the league, but especially to Utah and Sacramento and Portland and San Antonio and Indiana and any other small to medium market that's lost to the Lakers in the playoffs. The league and the refs are biased against the Lakers. Tell me another one. That is rich. Great. Tremendous humor. Let me get you a stand-up gig somewhere. Let's get you out on tour. That's hilarious. What a terrible take. The Lakers get every benefit of the doubt, and everybody in every one of the cities that I just mentioned believes that to their core, including all the people listening to me right now here in Utah. Which is why I think JJ was just saying what he thinks he's seen possession by possession over the course of 2 seasons coaching LeBron. Because he knows, and I don't think he was saying we would have beaten the Thunder if he got the call. And he knows, because he played in New Orleans, the Lakers get calls. They don't get in New Orleans. So I think that's really what he's seen and what he believes, even if the rest of us just kind of roll our eyes and scoff at it. Thunder look good. We're talking about going good to great this morning. I just mentioned going to the break. There's 3 teams in the playoffs that I think look great. You got the Thunder, defending champs. They are 6-0 in the playoffs. Now, they have earned the right to get a soft start, an easy start to the playoffs. They get an 8 seed. Detroit got an 8 seed and struggled and win 7 games. First off, get yourself somebody where there's a big talent gap, and then play to a level where you take advantage of that and win in 4, and they did. And now they have a team in the Lakers that obviously they're missing Doncic, and I think it's pretty clear Austin Reeves is not 100%. Excuse me. So they're 6-0, but I think they're going to keep rolling. Scotty G was on earlier this morning, and before I cough again, Scotty G was on earlier this morning, and he said he thinks that the number should be set at 19.5. Can the Thunder win the NBA title playing less than 19.5 games? We don't want to have a push, so he picked that 19.5. He thinks they can get it done by going 16-3 or maybe 16-2, 16-1. I think they're going to lose some games. They need more than that. But I do think they're the best team. I do acknowledge the Spurs had success in the regular season. Maybe the Spurs can get them in the playoffs. But let's see if the Spurs get there. They're 1-1 with the Timberwolves. Minnesota's going home for 2 games. And let's see what these games look like. Because the Timberwolves had a lot of things go right. Very few things go wrong. And they won a close one. Now, in Game 2, they got smoked. They're embarrassed, and they push back here in Game 3 and 4. So is this 2-2? Is it a 3-1 series when we go back to San Antonio for Game 5? Intrigued to see. But I think if the Spurs get past the Timberwolves, and I picked them to, and I still think they will, but the Timberwolves have earned enough respect that there should at least be a little doubt in all of our mind. So let's see how it goes this weekend. They play Game 3 tonight. It's the Knicks and Sixers at 5, and then the Spurs and Timberwolves at 7:30. Both those games on Prime Video. So if you got your Amazon, you're good to go there for the playoff games tonight. The Knicks, OG Anunoby suffered a hamstring strain late in their game to win. He's considered day-to-day. It's a hamstring. You're up 2-0. I wouldn't mess around with it myself, but I'm not a doctor and I haven't examined it. But I think a little time off. The injuries have been a big problem. Everybody's talking about how many three-pointers are taken. Everybody's talking about the load management. Well, I think the load management is happening because these teams are really getting hurt. These players on multiple teams are getting hurt. It's not just one training staff. It's rampant across the league throughout the playoffs. And I've seen more discussion. They did an anonymous survey of NBA players, and the players are actually like, we need to get rid of 10 games and back-to-backs. That's why guys are breaking down. You're asking them to run so much and then get on a plane, fly to another time zone, and run some more. Of course this is going to happen. They need the best players to play. Celebrity is what sells. We want to see the best players, not only the superstars. Like, Anunoby's a good player. I don't think he's a superstar. I don't think he's a celebrity, but partly because of his name and partly because of his team. It's a big market, and they're pretty good, so you know who he is. I know who he is. You know who he is. You want to see him play. You don't want to hear he's out. You know, and that's not on the same level with Luka Doncic being out, but it doesn't matter. We still want to see these guys. We want their lineups intact. And if he said that, I'd probably sit him tonight. And the players did acknowledge in the survey, I don't know how we make up the money. They should have done it when they got the big TV contract because nobody would have felt the loss. It's just like the pay raises would have slowed down, but nobody even wants that, so they didn't do it. There you go. If you want the money, you got to make choices, and one choice is guys are going to get hurt and sit. And I think that's another question that we can look at the Jazz going forward is, do they play these guys 35 minutes a night? I'm looking at the top 10 players in the league and minutes played, games played, and that kind of stuff, and those guys have a lot of injuries. So sub these guys out, play 30 minutes, rotate through, sit, let other guys play. This whole obsession about Markkanen and, you know, can he really play at the 3? Because now they got a 4. Well, Jackson can play 10 minutes at the 5 against a backup center, and that means – with the time he's on the bench also, that opens up 20 minutes for Markkanen to the 4. So now Markkanen's only got to play maybe 10 minutes or 15 minutes at the 3. And maybe that opens up a spot there for A.J. DeBonsa or Ace Bailey or however they want to slide guys around. I think there's some possibilities there. One weird story. We're all waiting for an exclamation on Darren Peterson, who could be the number 1 pick in the draft. That was certainly the thought at the start of the season. But then he misses close to a dozen games, maybe 10. And then he sits in the second half of a bunch of other games. And now all these doubts, like, if he doesn't go hard in college, is he going to go hard? Is he just protecting himself? He needs a story. And here's the story. You got to have a way to explain this. He says it's because he was using high doses of creatine. He says, I'd never taken it before I arrived at Kansas, but after the season I took 2 weeks off, and they did tests which showed my baseline level was already high. So they said when I dosed the creatine, it must have made the levels unsafe. So his baseline is high, and Kansas encouraged him or expected him to take this stuff, and it wasn't healthy. That doesn't reflect well on Kansas. I can't wait for the pushback in the next chapter in this story. And is that really what's going on with Peterson? Does that explain it? I wasn't pre-med on Friday nights at UC Santa Barbara. I don't have the background to know this kind of stuff. That's technical medical stuff, and somebody more informed than me will have to tell me if that could explain what he was going through. And if it does, and it's a good explanation, his talent, I mean, he can shoot it. You want the biscuit in the basket, that guy can score. Now, can he do everything else? How well-rounded will his game be at the NBA level? We can all debate that. I have seen mock drafts where Boozer goes in front of Peterson. You know, here's the thing about Boozer. First, you got to say this right away. He's really good. He's really, really good. You can see that watching college basketball. Now, having said that, he's not going to go number one. And I believe that, and this isn't breaking news, I think that's just because of his limited athletic ability by NBA standards. In this draft, with what we expect out of NBA players, you got to be off the charts. A.J. DeBonsa did stuff that made you scream at the TV. Whoa! I can't believe it, right? Throwing down dunks, blocking shots, whatever it is. That guy has a level of explosiveness and ability to change direction. Fantastic. And Boozer doesn't have it. And so that's going to knock him down a couple pegs. You know why you want Boozer? And I think this is super clear. First off, he reminds me a lot of his dad. I think he's got a complete game. I think he can do a lot of things. I think if you throw out the athletic ability, which you can't do because it's the NBA, but if you could, and if the question was simply, which player in this draft is most likely to get 100% out of his potential, I think it's Boozer. I think he does everything you could do. I saw everything from him I wanted to see in college except crazy levels of athleticism. How explosive is he? You know, with his size, he's not the best jumper. When he goes against a 7-footer who is, how's he going to get a shot off around the rim? Probably the way his dad did. Like the ability to use the offhand, the ability to pump fake, pivot, change direction, go the other way, send the shot blocker on a flyby, the ability to use his body to create space. I mean, I don't know how you could see a player and think, did his dad coach him up? Was his dad really good at this sport? Because the answer is his dad was really good at this sport, and his dad has clearly coached him up. So I think if you get Boozer, you're going to know you got the most that he could give you. But the fact is there are other players who have more athletic ability, and that's a tough box to get checked against you. I mean, said all that, I still think he's going second or third, and Peterson might have dropped behind Boozer. It'll depend with the draft lottery coming up Sunday at 1 o'clock. We'll see which teams land, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we'll start figuring out who they're valuing and where guys may be slotted. But right now, it's kind of an abstract argument. I am starting to see Peterson in a couple mock drafts. He's been 2, and then I look at a couple more and he's 3. So we'll see how that plays out. The college basketball news, the men's and women's basketball tournament's official. They're going to 76. They're going to have doubleheaders on back-to-back days in Dayton. That's what they've had. Now they're going to have a 12-game opening round. So that's 6 games and 2 sites, Dayton and somewhere else, and then they'll pick sites for the women as well. And it makes sense. Vegas or Salt Lake, lots of flights, the ability to send a team to a regional in Texas or a team to a regional in Portland or Sacramento or L.A., Arizona, wherever they're going. Lots of flights. Geography works. I would think they put it in Vegas or Salt Lake. All right, I mentioned the Thunder are one team we're watching the playoffs at a very high level. You got to put Carolina there. My gosh. They had an awesome regular season. They got themselves a good seed, and now they are 7-0 in the playoffs. They beat the Flyers 4-1. Dominant performance. Philly's at home. Philly's down 2-0. Philly knows they need a win to get back into the series. And what happens? They get smoked at home 4-1. So, Colorado had the best record in the league, 121 points. Carolina was second, 113 points. They're best in the East. They're best in the West. Carolina is now 7-0 in the playoffs. Colorado is 6-0 in the playoffs. The Avs are flying. Carolina's flying. If you're looking for 2 teams that are great right now, there you go. And probable Stanley Cup final. I know crazy things happen in the Stanley Cup playoffs. It's hockey. That puck can ding off the post, and then does it go in or go out? There's a little bit of luck involved there, a little bit of good fortune. You know, some crazy deflection in front of the net goes just wide or it goes in. Might be off you, might be off the opponent, might be your goal, might be the opponent's goal. There's a randomness to this sport for sure. But, man, Colorado and Carolina are just crushing people right now. A combined 13-0 in the playoffs after having the 2 best regular season records. Yeah, I think there's 2 teams that have reached great. I think that's what we're seeing right there. Other things we talked about, baseball, it's really weird. Usually, hey, somebody wins 7 out of 10, somebody wins 3 out of 10, the teams pull away. But we're seeing streaks. Tampa Bay's won 7 in a row right after they won 6 in a row, like 13-1 in their last 14. The Yankees have a stretch sort of like that going. The Cubs have won 9 in a row. They've won 15 straight at home. They've won 19 of 22 overall. They are on fire right now. The Cubs win again. They beat Cincinnati 8-3 to sweep that series. The Cubs' 15 straight wins at Wrigley Field coming up on the stadium record. Stadium records don't matter so much because they're tearing them down every 20 or 30 years, it seems like. I just read a thing. The Big A is the 4th oldest stadium in Major League Baseball, and the Dodger Stadium is 3rd. It's hard to build stadiums in California. And that's one reason the Chargers moved and the Raiders moved. And, man, the Giants and 49ers, they had long quests to get their new stadiums. They are hard to build and hard to get done. But the Cubs have been in that stadium for more than 100 years. So stadium records matter there in a way they don't matter in Atlanta or Arlington because they built stadiums every 15 years. The Cubs won 18 straight at home in 1935. Now they're at 15 straight at home. They are closing in on that record. That's one place the record matters. You got a little bit of data. You got a little sample size there. Bees lost to Oklahoma City 6-5. They play again tonight at 6 o'clock. Tony Park's on the call on 1280 The Zone. And they'll play again Saturday. You'll hear that game as well on 1280 The Zone. Coming up Saturday on 97.5 The Zone is Real Salt Lake and FC Dallas. We just had Pablo Mastroeni on. If you want to listen to that conversation with him, you can get that wherever you get your podcasts. Go to KSLSports.com, go to YouTube, Apple, Spotify, whatever, and you can hear Pablo talking about his team and where it stands. They're at Dallas, and then it's 4 games before the break against teams that are basically in the middle of the league. I think Minnesota's just a little in front of them. Dallas just a little behind them. They've also got Houston and Colorado who are a little behind them. So they're basically playing the middle of the Western Conference. We'll see how they stack up. They dominate. They get dominated. They split the games. It's 2 home, 2 away. We'll get a little check on them before they disappear for 6 or 7 weeks for a World Cup break. And one baseball note I should have mentioned. It's not in Utah, so that's a little bit of a disappointment. But the Bees are playing Oklahoma City. That's the Dodgers AAA affiliate. And the Dodger star Mookie Betts expected to start a rehab assignment tonight as the Bees play OKC. He's coming off an oblique strain, suffered on a check swing during the at-bat. So Mookie, little AAA ball against the Bees. That'll be legendary for the Bees to get to go against somebody. Those guys in AAA got to be pumped to see Mookie Betts in person and go against him. All right, DJ and PK. Oh, a couple other things. College football. Yuck. Who do you know? Who can you talk to get that BYU Washington State, or BYU Notre Dame game set up in Vancouver? Syracuse and Wake Forest are going to Toronto. I feel validated that game has been announced. I've been saying teams should go to Toronto. ASU, PK was just talking about this. ASU's going like week 3. They're going over in the middle of the season. They're traveling to go play at Wembley. And I just read a thing that the stadium's too big and the tickets are priced too high and they're not selling that many tickets. Well, what are we doing, people?
Or just ask FIFA. FIFA will figure it out for you.
It's easier to take a vacation and follow your team in August than what?
I said ask FIFA. They'll figure it out for you. Not.
Yeah. See, it's easier for people to follow teams in August and September. Scheduling a September game, that just doesn't make sense to me. Kids are back in school. August, you got a fighting chance. You got a fighting chance to get vacation time in August. September, the boss rolls your eyes at you. It doesn't make any sense to me why they're doing that. And you don't have to go that far. And once they start playing on week 0, this loophole may go away. I mean, if you're going to capitalize on it, Vancouver's a great town to go vacation in for a weekend. There's tons of places to eat. It's on the water. It's a time of year when the weather there is glorious. It's a big city. There's a lot to do. Fill that place up. Fans driving up from Seattle, Washington, BYU. Let's go. Big Ten versus the Big 12. Let's do it. Washington's only getting a half share in the Big Ten. They need a little more money. Get a payday out of an extra football game. Let's do it. Let's go. All right, DJ and PK, that is what we've been talking about this morning. Your feedback's coming up next. Stay with us. It is time for the feedback of the day, and it's brought to you by Half Price Granite. Transform your outdated kitchen with Half Price Granite. $25 per square foot installed. Visit halfpricegranite.com. All right, topic of the morning. How do you go from good to great? It is a question facing so many of our local teams. BYU football, BYU basketball, Utah football, the Jazz, the Mammoth, and RSL. All right, I'm jumping the gun on the Jazz a little bit because they're not good. They've tanked 4 years in a row. But I do believe they're going to win 45 games for sure next year. I think they could win 50. Let's see how the draft goes. Draft lottery, Sunday, 1 o'clock. Let's see how the offseason goes. You get through that, see what the roster really looks like and what everybody else's roster looks like, and then we can probably evaluate that better. But I'm not ruling out a 50-win season. But I do think this is a team doomed to go out in the first or second round of the playoffs. I'd actually be impressed if they win a playoff series. That'd be great. But with Oklahoma City and San Antonio in the West, and the way this roster looks right now, I'm trying to figure out, scratch your head, exactly how do they win 2 series and get to a conference final? I think if they do, you're a legit title contender. The championship window is open at that point. It just look, that's a big jump. I can't make that jump yet. No way. I'll make the jump to 45 or 50 wins. I'll make the jump to maybe winning a playoff series. Let's see who they match up with. Let's see how the year goes. Let's see what the roster looks like. But good to great. How did the Jazz do it? Are they painting themselves in a corner a little bit with these two $50 million contracts? And now Kessler and Keontae George need to be paid in consecutive summers, and their numbers need to come in right. So when Austin Ainge says he's working on getting better, I mean, there's a lot of work to do. There are puzzles to solve here. And, well, I mean, you're the one who wanted that job, and you're getting paid good money and all those things. So see how they figure it out. See what options they avail themselves of going forward. But trade's coming. Don't get too emotionally attached to anybody because I don't think they can get there just with the simple internal organic growth that we always used to hear Dennis Lindsay talk about. That's an important thing. I don't underestimate that. How you get all these young draft picks to improve so that they're rotation guys for playoff teams and maybe a starter for a rotation team. You've got to be good at that internal organic growth, but that alone isn't going to push them across the line. Got a question up on our Facebook page. How does your favorite team go from good to great? And we got some good responses to this one. And most of you answering in the form of a GIF, which I appreciate. A little comedy in there. I like it. It's funny how if you say the same thing in words or a GIF, in social media, if you say it in words, you tend to get attacked. And if you say it in a GIF, people tend to laugh. There's some psychology there I don't completely understand, but I find it fascinating. In any case, Chewbacca says, how do we go from good to great? This, period. This is how, period. Hashtag D-backs. And he's got Randy Johnson, the ball cap on and almost a smile on his face. Not quite, just a little bit of a grin, and he's holding the World Series trophy. And standing next to him, holding what looks like, I don't know, is that an MVP trophy, I think? Or maybe it's a National League trophy, I'm not sure. I don't know. I only know what the World Series trophy looks like. The big one is Curt Schilling. 2001 World Series champs, that's it. The Diamondbacks in like their third year of existence. Got 2 awesome pitchers. Those 2 guys got on a roll, and they rode them to a championship. And they beat the Yankees in the World Series. It was sweet. I wonder if that recipe works anymore. 2 dominant pitchers and you ride them. It's certainly not what the Dodgers have used the last couple of years. And I don't know that anybody else is really set up for that right now, where you got 2 dominant guys. You have teams that have pretty good staffs or a dominant guy and some pretty good guys. I don't think anybody has that combo. But a good theory. Good work, Chewbacca. I like it. And then we got D-Tier Ute Stan at Mr. Frank 1212. He just sends a picture of Morgan Scally with that gray beard. Morgan looks 10 years younger since he shaved that beard off. Good decision, Morgan. Take it off. You're the head coach now. And he looks younger, too. The gray beard. No, lose it. And he did. See, they're pretty interesting here. I mean, on the one hand, you can say, no, D-tier, you're wrong. And the argument there is, hey, it's about NIL money, and the Utes need to be on a higher tier. They need more cash if they're really going to go from good to great. There is another argument that Morgan needs to do what Kyle did, because what Kyle did got him to 11-2. I mean, they handled everybody except BYU, and BYU handled everybody but Texas Tech. Our 2 local teams are really good. 12-2, 11-2. But, you know, for all their differences, you know what the Ute and the Cougars fan bases have in common? is they want to go to the playoff. And when they get there, they want to win. And neither one of them was seriously talked about. BYU was talked about in passing, but they weren't seriously talked about getting in. And you can go to politics and in the Big 12, and there's probably a lot of truth to that. And they don't have the history that Miami has. Now, the people who put Miami in the tournament can say, well, Miami won an opening round game, went to Texas A&M and won, and then they won their quarterfinal, and then they won their semi, and then they actually pushed Indiana in the title game, and no one pushed Indiana. Indiana was blowing people out. I suppose Ohio State did. Ohio State and Miami were the only two who pushed him. But does Morgan make a change in the passing game? That's the one place where Kyle's teams need to be upgraded. Do they get a little better there? Because I think even being a little better there could pay big dividends. But you got to keep everything else rock solid. Kyle did a lot of other things right. Is that D-line going to stay awesome? Is the O-line going to be awesome? They got a lot of work to do. I think the O-line's more of a finished product. I think the D-line, I have more questions right now. So, awesome picture of Morgan. Good idea there, Mr. Frank. Thanks for sending that in. We'll spend more time on that. We got more time to talk college football going forward. Scotty G and the coach are next. Have a good weekend. We'll see you back here. Good luck to the Jazz Sunday, 1 o'clock. We all find out. Tim, Scotty will be talking about it next. Stay with us.